everybody, how you doing? Welcome to the show. It's 2026. It's the Jeff Gerstmann Show. It's a podcast. We're talking about video games, mostly. Some of the technology and culture that surrounds them, I suppose. While we're at it, I mean, why not? It's a little too loud. I thought I'd drop this down, but I didn't. Hey, hi. What's going on? How's your what's your new year getting off to? Anything good? I'm guessing no, not yet. It's a happy January 6th to those who celebrate, right? Hey, hi. After a couple weeks of maybe getting off work, I don't know, the kids go back to school tomorrow. So today's kind of their last day to do stuff. My daughter's gonna go see Zootopia 2. I don't know. I don't think she's seen Zootopia 1, so I don't think she's gonna understand anything. But she's gonna come back a furry, isn't she? Isn't that how that works? Well, we support her in everything she's into. The morning light is streaming through these garage windows here behind me. I decided not to open the door because it's cold. I don't know. It's a little bit of cold air in the garage while I'm in it. Maybe that helps keep me sharp. But yeah, I don't know. We're here. There's not much. The break did not, it was a nice break from video games and the video game industry to a certain extent. Everyone actually kind of, for the most part, stopped doing stuff, and that's something of a rarity these days. It just feels like games really don't stop all that often. Did this camera drift? Is this camera moving? I feel like there was more. I feel like it was more like that, but I don't know. I'll tilt it a little bit here. Center up in this shot here. We played a bunch of Astrobot. That's pretty much how it's been going here. Is the kids have graduated from Astro. They've wrung all the enjoyment they were going to get out of Astro's Playroom, and wanted to try out proper Astrobot, so we reinstalled that. And I never actually finished Astrobot. I got really close, and then it was a mixture. I think I did it to myself. It's one of those things where you, I tried to get every robot out of every level without moving on, and just kind of grinding through. Trying to complete everything as I saw it, as opposed to just like blasting through the game and then going back and getting the rest of the stuff. And so, I don't know. I think I just kind of burned out on it a little bit. I was, I think Astrobot is a really great game, and it's been fun playing through it again here. We're about to get into, I think, some of the late game stuff that also they patched in a bunch of stuff that I don't think you get to see until after you beat the game. They kept adding more robots to it. I know that much, but yeah, it's been interesting coming back to it. It's definitely from a perspective of just like, how can a 4-year-old play this game? I think we think a lot of things about kids games, right? You think a lot of stuff about what you think a kid can handle, and a kid, oh, this is too much, and one of the really interesting things about my kids being somewhat into video games. My son is maybe a little too much into video games at the moment, and but he still wants to go out and do things and have fun, and so it's not fully taking over. But when he's here at home, that's what he wants to do. It's like, hey, you want to go out in the backyard and play? No, I want you to play this Astrobot level for me. And that's been kind of the interesting thing is seeing what he can tackle and what he can't, and what he comes to me for help on, and his perception of how these games are built. Because Astrobot, I've seen a bunch of people say like, Astrobot would be a great kids game, and in my experience, it's been actually all right, but there are definitely a lot of things there, especially some of the little one-off levels where he's been struggling with. Really, it's been a lot of the basic platforming. The game is really good about anytime it gives you a weird control thing. Like, oh, you got this monkey or dog. You got a monkey or a dog or a monkey dog, whatever. You get a dog on your back that makes you do, jet boosts or whatever. Anytime you get to a point where you need to use that jet boost to proceed and you don't use it, after a few seconds up in the corner, a little thing appears showing the R2 trigger being pulled. And, he can see that and go, oh, and then hit it and he can move on from there. And, it's very forgiving. You don't have to deal with lives or anything dumb like that. You kind of just get to bounce off of it until you make it through. And the checkpoints in most of the levels are very forgiving, I would say, in the standard levels. And so, they've made some pretty good progress. I've had to do the boss fights. My daughter, who, is a little bit better at stuff than my son is at the moment. She's 6, he's 4. She's taken over and done some stuff that he wasn't able to do. And so it's been fun watching the two of them play together and pass it back and forth and try to, get past stuff and all of that. Like that's been kind of interesting to watch and fun, Alma asks, have they recognized any game characters? No. Well, so exactly one game character has been recognized. And it's the prince from Katamari. Which my son came out here. He came running out here. Like, the prince is, we need to save the prince. You need to help me. The prince is here. We have to save the prince. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, let's go do that. And I got him out of his tree. And got him, and it's funny because he calls all the other robots cousins. We've got to get all the cousins because everything is, boy who's only played Katamari game. This is reminding me a lot of the Katamari game. But he went through. There's a level in there where you can shrink to mouse size and back up again, and so you have to shrink down to get through some tight areas and then go back and watching him like puzzle that out and figure it out, watching him get stuck on it a little bit and go, I don't know what I'm doing here. And then figure out like, oh, okay, I can turn small again. And then I can do that. Like it's been really interesting just to watch him, conduct problem solving. He is still a little too reliant on. It's the frustrating thing about moving everything out here to the garage is that, he comes out and says, I need help. And then I have to go all the way back inside, do a thing for him, and then argue with him because he wants me to play like 3 more levels. And I'm like, I got to go out here and do some more stuff. Okay, fine. I'll play 1 and then go back out. And then he's, 15 minutes later, he's back out here again. Going like, I need help. And like, no, you don't need help. You are perfectly capable of doing this. And so that's all been kind of interesting, but I don't know. I tried to explain to him that like, hey, some of these robots are from other video games, and, it just doesn't, I don't know. Like the prince didn't really put it into any kind of sharp perspective when I was like, well, this rookie cop here is Leon S. Kennedy and he's from is a zombie, and there's just nothing. Just no. Like there's a whole level where you do like God of War Kratos stuff and he's just like, I need help with the ice level. I'm like, yeah, I guess that makes sense that's just the ice level and not here's this kind of whatever God of War reference here. But I don't know. Him and his sister did the Ape Escape themed level all by themselves, and that was pretty awesome. They got everybody. They made it all the way through, and that was pretty neat. And I don't know. I'm looking forward to kind of getting through the rest of it and seeing what got added into that game because I know they put in some of the time trial stuff, some of the leaderboard stuff late. Or it's like the thing you can't really see until you beat the game or whatever. And I just, had gotten very close and never actually finished it and hadn't really had a good reason to go back and play it. So it's been fun to go back and do that again. And I like I still like the hard levels. I still like the kind of one shot, the controller button levels that are in that game that you find and unlock that are, just really like, here's a short level, no checkpoint, just get to the end. And there's no secrets or any other things to do along the way. And and whatever. Like I think those levels are that's kind of what I've enjoyed of that game for just from a skill perspective. The rest of it, I think is like it's too easy. It's great for kids. Right? I guess like it is actually like great for kids. I would not say it's a great first game for kids or anything like that. Like you need to know what the analog sticks do. So without him having played like hours and hours of Goat Simulator, he would not be able to get any enjoyment out of Astrobot. Without Goat Simulator kind of locking in the nature of here's what a controller really does and here's how you really use it and here's how a camera, here's what camera control means, and like here's what the right stick is supposed to do, and without kind of picking up that sort of language that so many games use and so many things kind of so many of us kind of take for granted at this point. It's without that, he would not be able to get any enjoyment. I don't think he would be like a successful platformer, like moving and jumping, and some of that other stuff was stuff that was tripping both of them up not that long ago, and so it's been really interesting to watch that progression as well. And now I feel like they're relatively ready for modern games. Like my daughter has played enough Minecraft to have a basic grasp on first-person control concepts and all of that. I would not dump her into a competitive shooter and say, "Here you go," but but it is fascinating to kind of watch that stuff sort of coalesce and come together. My daughter does keep trying to play Pokemon ZA. And every time there's a Pokemon battle, she runs to me with the Switch and wants me to do it for her. And I keep telling her, listen, if you can't do the fights in a Pokemon game, you should probably just play. So, which the kids don't want to hear. You should probably play a different game. Like, hey, you should really, consider if this is the thing you want to do. Because you need to hold down this button to target it and then push these buttons to fire off these attacks, and then there's levels to which attacks you want to be using and all of the other stuff that we're not even having the conversation about yet. So I don't know, she's interested in it though, so I don't know, we'll see. Polygonal Bilal says your kids should try SWAT 4. Yeah, definitely a little SWAT 4. They played some Pac-Man and some old Mario and some of the kind of arcade classics or whatever, but it's not something that I think that they are directly interested in, and I'm not sure that it actually like serves that. That's sort of the you've heard people say like, oh, we got to start our kids on the classics so that they came up with a way, and I think that stuff I think those are a lot of false premises. And but I did think about it from just a control or concept perspective of like, you need to know what a D-pad does. Like Pac-Man, you move in the directions, you work your way through a maze. Like, it does seem like you could learn something there that would help you kind of gain a better grasp on what it means to use a controller or whatever. But like I don't know, the sticking point for a while with both of them, especially with platformers, is that they could not run and jump at the same time. And so, anytime they had to like jump at an angle to land on an upper platform or something like that, or jump over a pipe in Super Mario Brothers or something like that was not that was sort of a like not getting through to them for a pretty long time. And now, I don't know, they're making their way through Astrobot, which is crazy. They grow up so fast. Zootopia 2. What the fuck? Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll get into I don't know, everything else that's been happening, which is not a ton, but there's definitely been some happenings in the world of video games. A new year, colder days, these are the moments when your winter wardrobe really has to deliver. So if you're looking for some kind of winter reset, start with pieces that are truly made to last season after season. That's Quince. Quince brings together premium materials, thoughtful design, and enduring quality so you can stay warm and look sharp and feel your best all season long. Quince has everything you need. They got men's Mongolian cashmere sweaters, wool coats, leather and suede outerwear that actually hold up to daily wear and still look good. I kept hearing about people loving these cashmere sweaters over the holiday. Their outerwear is especially impressive. You think, like down jackets, wool coats, Italian leather outerwear. They keep you warm when it's actually cold. Huh? Each piece is made from premium materials by trusted factories that meet rigorous standards for craftsmanship and ethical production. And, they cut out the middlemen. They cut out all the traditional markups so Quince can deliver the same quality as luxury brands at a fraction of the price. The result? Classic styles that you'll love that hold up year after year. They've got jewelry, they've got some nice earrings and other stuff. Of course, the cashmere sweaters are what they're, becoming known for. And like I said, over the holidays, I got an earful from a couple of relatives about how much they love that cashmere. Here it doesn't really get cashmere sweater cold, so I've been rocking a couple of pairs of shorts and some shirts and stuff. It is nice material. It's stuff that holds up in the wash, stuff that feels good to wear, nice material, all of that sort of stuff. It's been really great. Refresh your winter wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/JeffG for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. It's now available in Canada, too. That's QUINCE.com/JeffG. Free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/JeffG. All right. And, in the interest of kind of like doing some housekeeping and cleaning out the refrigerator, it's time to try this other flavor of AI energy. This swill is from Jack Owak, who's the mind behind Bang. He's on the can. They put his picture on the can. AI energy. It is. I don't know. You and it's got his signature on the back here. It says, "You and I set the beverage industry ablaze, creating the multi-billion-dollar performance energy drink category. We pioneered emotional and social connectivity, making energy flavorful and fun. Now I'm stoked to bring you AI energy, my most brilliant and delicious innovation ever." These are 12 ounce cans, the little thin guys. I tried the grape a couple weeks ago. What's the AI part? I think AI designed the shitty looking cans and the logo, and probably, I'm sure if you went to the website, you would find the rantings of a maniac claiming that AI helped with the flavor somehow as well. There's this was in a water cooler that was in a data center, and then they poured it out into it. No. So blue raspberry. The grape was terrible, I should say. And so because you have to order this stuff by the case, someone sent me 2 cases of it. We tried the grape. It was miserable. And now let's try the blue. And then perhaps I'll be free of this stuff. I don't know what to do. I have so much of it. This smells like a blue raspberry. This smells very powdery. It smells, like a Sonic the Hedgehog 3 lifesaver. It's a Kool-Aid blue raspberry type of smell, sickly sweet, overly sweet, if anything, and also, yes, powdery, like someone poured a blue raspberry scent flavored powder into something. That is the smell of it. I drank some. It doesn't taste like anything. It doesn't taste like anything. There's like a light hint of, I suppose, like a blue raspberry in the aftertaste, which is that was the grape flavor had the same feeling of like it was like drinking water, but then like the after effect of it was disgusting. This tastes like you're drinking water, and then when the liquid is out of your mouth, and you're like, what is that flavor that's on the inside of my mouth? You're like, oh, it's like I drank a blue raspberry thing. It's like a ghostly haunted aftertaste. I don't. Like, it doesn't taste like anything. This is terrifying. Like, this is the worst case scenario. This is like, I'm scared of what the fuck am I drinking? What the fuck is happening to me? It's not even like super carbonated, so it's a carbonated beverage. It both tastes like nothing, but also doesn't taste like water, if that makes any sense. I don't. This is inexplicable. And then, yeah, there's an aftertaste that has that kind of blue raspberry Kool-Aid kind of thing. I'm freaking out, man. This ain't right. I don't know what to do with this. And the only, the only reason it feels okay is because, like I said, the grape was at least similar in concept, where like it had this very empty middle, and then the aftertaste. But the aftertaste on the grape was like sickening. It was like, this is what the hell. Like as it came on, it was like filthy. It was gross. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should keep drinking this or not. This seems wrong. What have they done? There's nothing in here about any kind of, it just says it contains no fruit juice, which, yeah, it just says it's gluten-free. There's no, I'm not seeing any indicator as to like the energy content of this. It contains L-Dopa. It's me, L-Dopa. NeuroSync proprietary blend, 700 milligrams of A-acetyl L-tyrosine, CDP citrulline, caffeine, L-theanine, Mucuna proteins. Mucuna No, that doesn't say proteins. That says purines powder, which contains L-Dopa, and Huperzine A. I love a little Huperzine A in the morning to really get things going. It's a terrifying list of whatever the fuck this is. And then, some B3 and B6 and some biotin. Why not? Grow our nails out. L-Dopa. I'm just going to add this to the list real quick, because while we're here, it's very confusing. It's like there's nothing happening in it. We have 195 drinks on the list here. Faxicandi Booster Twisted Strawberries at the bottom. Rockstar Zero Fruit Punches at the top. AI Energy Grape is all the way down at 156. This is better than that just by virtue of the aftertaste not being disgusting, but it's somehow scarier. This is, but it tastes like nothing. I don't like this. This is, I'm really confounded. This is confounding. I don't like this. I don't like the way this makes me feel. It's not that the drink is doing something to me directly, but something about drinking this thing that is largely unknown and made by a lunatic and tastes like absolute nothing is like way more off-putting to me than if it just was a Faxicon, but like if it just tasted terrible. If it was just garbage, like at least I would know what I would, I was like, okay, well, yeah, all right. This is and now that I'm sitting here with it, having not drank any more, the powdery kind of like chemical-y flavor is starting to come through. And that's a little foul, but it's not, it's not dramatically so. This is I don't like this. I don't like this. I'd like this. There's something again. I'm like freaking out. I don't like the way, I don't like whatever this is. I want a drink to taste like a drink. I want to feel like I drink it and I know what I did. And this is like haunting. This feels like, I don't know. It's like, when you drink Everclear and it just burns and there's nothing there and it just burns. At least it burns. Like this doesn't even do that. And you're like, is it as vapid as the Florida playgrounds where it was invented? I don't know. I don't have a way to like sum this up and what is, I don't. I don't. This is better than the grape, but it is. I would still rather drink a Bang Lemon Drop Sweet Iced Tea. It's our new number 156, I guess. It's gonna push the. Despite being like fairly different. I don't like this at all. All right, I don't. This is all right. We're gonna oh, I closed all the topics and stuff. Hang on. Let's just move on. CES is happening right now. The Consumer Electronics Show. The CES has not really been a thing that really matters for video games for, I don't know, a couple of decades now. But there was always good for like one or two little bits of information. It's very funny. I don't know. There's something about the idea of a consumer electronics show at a time when, different companies are kind of bailing out of selling things to consumers in the first place. It's just like, no, we're going to sell this for data centers. But there are still a bunch of consumer electronics being made, and I don't know, all of it looks like shit. A couple of neat little things that you're like, oh, okay, but like there hasn't been anything that's felt like, oh, this is a paradigm shift in the way technology is presented. Like the things that people are heralding as like it's the best of CES because these tech reporters have to fucking do something. They're like, it's a phone, but it's not a phone. It's got a keyboard on it, and it's meant for just your messaging apps. And you can get that. And for people who want a more focused experience when messaging people so that they stay focused. You're like, what? So you want me to buy a $500 fucking another device that is just for messaging apps? And also, it connects to the network itself, so I'll have to pay some kind of monthly fee to have this in addition to my phone? Are you fucking high? What the fuck is wrong with people? Why would you do this? Why would anyone fucking do this? Like, you already have a fucking phone. Like, it's from the company that makes the keyboard case for phones. Like, I could see a case for getting that and be like, well, I like having a keyboard. But if you're like, let's just... The phone has too many distractions, so my solution is to buy another separate device. You fucking dummy? You dunce? You fucking dope? Are you serious? Come on. So I don't know, it's been a lot of stuff like that. And not a ton of substance there out of any of this stuff. But there have been, like NVIDIA had their thing last night and they did not announce a new graphics card. There's been talk, and all of this is sourced to a Twitter post, a very vague Twitter post, but it's from someone who has like apparently a decent track record in reporting on NVIDIA leaks. But there was rumors going around starting yesterday that NVIDIA is about to bring back the 3060, which is a graphics card that they stopped making in like 2024 and sold out of them at some point last year, but they have not been manufactured for a little while. That is kind of in a lot of ways the sweet spot for the Steam hardware survey. And also it's a card that probably has slower RAM on it and other things that are not currently in demand for fucking AI data centers and all the other bullshit that NVIDIA is doing. And so it became a very believable rumor. It became a very believable rumor in terms of, hey, they're going to bring back they're about to raise the prices on all their graphics cards to astronomical highs. And then also apparently bring back the 3060, which is pretty crazy. But also, it kind of depends on the price. Like if this were to happen, which again, they did not announce this last night. They did not tip their hand about bringing back the 3060. The rumor is just that like, hey, it's going to come back and they're gonna ship it or release it sometime this quarter. That's the sort of thing that if it came back, the price would have to be, extremely low, or they're about to like extremely raise prices on even the lower end 50 series cards, because a 5050, if you want an RTX 5050, the lowest price for those is like $249. And so if you can get like a 50 series card for $250, if they bring back a 30 series card, like what is that? Is that $190? Is that like are they under $200 for that thing? Or is that just, are they waiting for the 50 series cards to all be doubled in price or something like that, and then they put out a $300 3060 or something weird like that? I don't know. There's a weird there's kind of a chicken and egg thing happening here, where if this is going to happen, the pricing needs to line up, and some of the prices on the other cards make that not necessarily make the most sense in the world. But that's not what they announced. NVIDIA got up in front of people and wasted a whole bunch of time and did talk about the release of DLSS 4.5, which is available right now in some sort of beta form. The proper NVIDIA app settings will be released to everyone, I believe, next week. But you can go, check the opt-in to beta features in the NVIDIA app right now and get access to those kind of newer models. This is stuff that impacts DLSS as well as ray reconstruction and also frame generation. So it's kind of updated models for that stuff. You can force games to use the latest models. And so that's basically what you're doing with the NVIDIA app, is going in and saying, hey, don't use DLSS 4, use DLSS 4.5. And this is, I don't know, they talked about benchmarks and some of this other stuff, and they're talking about a later update to frame generation that will bump up the number of potential fake frames to 6. Right now, I believe it tops out at 4. And also a mode that will kind of automatically determine all of that stuff for you, which is designed, I believe, to have kind of better frame pacing than some of the previously available options for frame generation. Frame generation is one of those tricky things that sucks, but is like certainly better than it was. There are scenarios where if your frame rate is already kind of decent in a game and you turn on 2x and don't go much higher than that, at least on a 5090, I have had experiences where I've been able to turn on 2x and be like, okay, yeah, no, this still feels okay. But in situations where, I was talking about hooking up Call of Duty and running it in 4K and trying to, and the frame rate being hit really hard by that, and trying to turn on frame gen to account for it, that felt terrible. So there's still too many scenarios where frame generation just affects the feel of a game, whether that's just kind of directly on the input latency side or how that translates to game feel in a more nebulous way. Sucks, man. Like, it just sucks. So you need like a really light touch with it. And so it's funny to me that they're like, no, we're pushing it even further. It's like, I haven't seen a scenario where like 4x frame gen didn't ruin the feel of a game in my, admittedly not exhaustive testing, but as I got this card and it could do it, I'm like, well, yeah, I don't know, what the fuck does this do? And turn some of that stuff on, and you're like, this sucks. As someone who actually likes to play video games and cares about the way they feel, this is not a good way to play these games, especially when we're talking about competitive games where the feel is everything. It's a really, I don't know, it's just kind of a very silly road to go down that I don't know who benefits from this. Like, I don't know who's turning all this stuff on and going, this is nice. It's almost like, are they trying to backdoor people into shit latency so that when everyone just uses cloud computing to play games later, they go, oh yeah, I'm used to games feeling terrible. These games have felt terrible for years. This is still exactly, it's just a fucking weird thing, man. I did install the DLSS 4.5 stuff last night, and the only game I had installed that I think used a DLSS 4 at the moment was Call of Duty, and so I went in and turned and forced it to use the newer models. In my experience, the frame rate was far more uneven. I felt and saw way more tits to the frame rate with the new models turned on than I did previously. So nice work, everybody. And it brought back all of this is something that the latest round of NVIDIA drivers had fixed, but there is with the ray reconstruction, where it is kind of using DLSS to reconstruct ray traced lighting and in ways that is supposed to help with the performance on that stuff. There was something happening for a good chunk of time there earlier, or kind of late last year, with the NVIDIA drivers, where games were getting really sparkly, like noisy. You were seeing little gray pixels just kind of shimmer on some surfaces with ray reconstruction turned on. This is something that happens in the lobby in Call of Duty in Black Ops 7. You'd see in the background of some of the scenes just the little pixels that just stand out, like they just looks awful. You're like, what is the game broken? Is my GPU melting down? Like it was like that type of like scenario. And the same thing appeared in Doom, The Dark Ages. Same type of shimmer, just same type of like, noisy pixel garbage, making the image quality look bad. That went away at some point. At some point that got corrected or whatever happened. The release of last night's drivers and enabling the DLSS 4.5 stuff and using the latest models for ray reconstruction and so on and so forth brought all of that back and then some in Call of Duty. I did not try Doom yet, but I assume that it brought it back there as well. And so I don't know what the fuck is going on there, but but immediately I was like, okay, I need to turn all this stuff off, because in my, again, admittedly rather limited experience with this DLSS 4.5 stuff, it's notably worse than the drivers that were out there yesterday, or a day before yesterday, I suppose. So I don't know what to make of that. Again, this is technically still some kind of beta. They're not going to roll it out in the NVIDIA app widely until the 13th, which is next Tuesday. So I have no idea what to make of any of that. But that was their big announcement. that was their big announcement. for, you know, kind of gaming technology was that stuff. And yeah, it sucks. Also, the first round of G-Sync Pulsar monitors are hitting this morning. The four-ish, for the four monitors, it was a 4 or 5. It's a pretty small number of monitors that support G-Sync Pulsar went on sale. I was trying to find exactly how much this stuff cost, but I'm not instantly finding price points for it. There's a ROG Strix Pulsar. These are mostly, I think for the most part, these are 27-inch monitors that are 1440p. And Pulsar is meant to be, it's almost like a black strobe, like a almost like a black frame insertion, or I don't know the right way to describe this, but you know, I'm not one of the blur busters, but the concept here is that by using that type of technology, it is smoothing out motion on screens. It is helping with motion clarity, which when you see some of that stuff, like black frame insertion and that sort of technology, when you've got it all set up properly, it's really neat, but it's really heinously tricky to configure properly. And I've here on my setup, I've never had a really great time using any of that stuff. But so this is kind of an add-on. This is something that, you know, monitors will directly support Pulsar if they have this kind of motion clarity in it. And so it's not just like black frame insertion. There is something different. But this is I'm looking at the ROG, and there's like I said, there's a few different manufacturers making and releasing these monitors today. 27-inch 1440p 360 hertz. It's an IPS display. So I don't know if any of the other manufacturers are making OLEDs that do this, or if it's something that is like if it is not conducive to do this in conjunction with being an OLED, because I have a 360 hertz OLED right here that is 1440p. It's a great fucking monitor. Pulsar sounds really neat, but yeah, it's IP. Okay, yeah. Kyle says it's IPS only for now. So yeah, I don't think I'm willing to give up OLED technology, which it makes sense, you know, IPS being what it is, it makes sense why it's that, but I don't think I'm willing to give up on that just to get the motion clarity on an IPS display. That does sound very neat though. Maybe not vital. There's, you know, the thing you get when this stuff is configured properly, and someone, RetroArch, the emulator, has some filters and stuff built in that will kind of do BFI and attempt to kind of mimic this sort of thing on any kind of high refresh rate monitor. And I have had a hell of a time getting that to work, to be honest. But from seeing people that have gotten it up and running and hearing what they have to say about it, the basic idea here on motion clarity is that you're having something that is a little bit closer to that CRT style experience. And so in a sick way, the thing that interests me the most, and then they're using screenshots of like Counter-Strike because they're trying to say like, oh dude, this is going to be really great for esports, or, you know, the motion clarity is really great for the demand of esports. And so they had screenshots and still images of CS2 and stuff like that. And looking at the clarity enhancement of, like, I'm looking at Digital Foundry's story over at digitalfoundry.net, and they've got some of the images from the NVIDIA stuff here. And I got to tell you, the motion clarity enhancement with Pulsar turned on, it does not look super awesome. Oh, but this is off-screen photography, so, you know, it's sort of a weird. They're taking pictures of a screen that's never going to translate well anyway. But the thing that interests me about G-Sync Pulsar is actually just running old video games on it. and seeing what type of level of motion clarity you can get out of NES games and all of that sort of stuff. That's what the RetroArch implementation of that stuff is kind of designed for, right? Is like, hey, you can play, you can emulate games and get something that is a little closer to that CRT experience that people are chasing so dramatically. And with a high hertz refresh rate on a monitor, you can start to insert those black frames and start to, you can do those things to do what to get it there. That's something I need to mess with. The last time I messed with it was like the week that all of that came out and was added to RetroArch, and I couldn't make it work. But maybe some of that stuff has been refined a little bit since then. It would not be something I could stream, because when you start streaming stuff that has all that filter on it, it looks fucked. So, but for me, in my spare time, maybe I could turn some of that stuff on. So G-Sync Pulsar seems interesting, but not for the reasons that they say it's interesting. The idea that I'm like, oh yes, I need the power of esports. We need to do this. And, a few other announcements around machine learning intensive. So this is they're going to launch a beta test for Total War Pharaoh. That will add an AI advisor as an RTX exclusive beta test in 2026. That will cost you 6 gigs of VRAM to run in the background. So hopefully you have a card with enough RAM on it to do both. NVIDIA Ace is designed to be like a locally run AI model, with the idea being like, oh, it's an assistant that can run in games and all of this other stuff. And so an AI advisor inside of Total War Pharaoh sounds like a beta. Sounds like the sort of thing you would do for a beta, but I don't, whatever. And that's largely it for kind of the gaming focused stuff. The dynamic frame generation stuff is going to hit in the spring, so that's not part of this beta rollout. The stuff that can go up to 6x and kind of dynamically adjust as needed. That is something that is not ready today, but the other stuff is, if you opt into that beta, I would be curious to see some more testing done with some of this stuff, because like I said, my experience with Call of Duty is that DLSS 4.5 is notably worse than 4.0 or whatever the previous version was. So that is clearly not what they are aiming for. So I don't know. I don't know what if this is something that's going to get better in a week's time, or what the heck is happening there. But in my experience, the shits. Let's take another ad break. We'll come back. We'll talk about the return of the JogCon. Finally. It's a brand new year, and you've got big goals. But, that doesn't leave a lot of time for other stuff. Do you not have time to cook? Hey, Factor makes it easy with fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs so you can eat well without the shopping or the cooking. Those Factor meals have quality, functional ingredients, including lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole food ingredients, and healthy fats. There's no refined sugars or artificial sweeteners or refined seed oils, They got meals that fit your goals and your schedule. Healthier eating, calorie management, more protein, and so on and so forth. They've got 100 rotating weekly meals. They've got options including high protein, calorie smart, a Mediterranean diet, GLP-1 support, and new ready-to-eat salads. Plus, they've got a new Muscle Pro collection supporting strength and recovery. So if you're working out and you need something to eat after the fact, hey, Muscle Pro might be right up your alley. They got these great juices. They sent out with the last order. They sent along some of these nice pressed juices that they do. It's just fantastic. Nice to have a selection of them in the fridge. You can just grab one and go. And making the meals super easy. They're ready in about 2 minutes. They arrive fresh. They're not frozen. There's no prep. There's no stress. You just warm it up and get going, and then get going. You want to get going? It's time to get going. Head to factormeals.com/JeffG50off and use the code JeffG50off to get 50% off your first Factor box, plus free breakfast for 1 year. This offer is only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Make healthier eating easy with Factor. Hello, fine games, sir. Have you any controllers for me? Yes, in fact, the Game Sir does have some new controllers for you. Game Sir feels like they're on the come up as far as like weird ass controller manufacturers go. I feel like there's kind of a, if I had to establish a triumvirate of these, it's like it's 8-bit do. It is the Ghoulie Kit KK3, the KK2s, the King Kong Pro that they're making, and they're making some other stuff now too. And GameSir seems like it is kind of risen into that space quite well over the last chunk of time. I have not used any of GameSir's products, but I've heard a lot of good things. They have a new one coming along here. The Verge reported on this. This is something that I guess got announced ahead of CES, and they are potentially showing it there. It is something called the Swift Drive controller, and it is it's a video game controller for video games. The catch is that it's got a fat wheel in the middle, just like Namco's JogCon for the PlayStation. It will have some sort of force feedback on the wheel itself. It has this in lieu of a second analog stick from the looks of things. It's got a left analog and then, face buttons and shoulders. It will have force feedback in the triggers as well. But it does have what GameSir is referring to as the world's smallest direct drive motor for force feedback in your driving games. This is really cool. If you don't remember, the Namco JogCon is a PlayStation 1 controller that was released alongside Ridge Racer Type 4, good old R4. It's basically a standard shaped sized controller, but with a fat wheel in the middle that you would jog and shuttle back and forth like the wheel on a VCR. That's why it was called the JogCon, is because it was like the jog wheel that some VCRs have. My VCR has one on its remote control, but that VCR is broken now, so who cares? And it would give you force feedback as you were driving. R4, I always want to go back and play Ridge Racer Type 4 because it is such a cool fucking game. The visual style is unmatched in a lot of ways. Just an incredible vibe game in terms of the soundtrack and the look and all of that other stuff. But I played that game with the JogCon, and I loved it. The JogCon was so fucking cool. The JogCon, actually, in a lot of ways, R4 is the first Ridge Racer game that I did really, really well at. Previous to that, I'd never understood what Ridge Racer was expecting of me as a driver. How the drifts and slides worked, and how, the way all of that stuff is meant to be played. And so, playing through Rage Racer, I would do fine. I could eventually, win the races and do what I needed to do. But generally speaking, I was using the grip cars because the drifting the way you were supposed to drift in Ridge Racer didn't make a lot of sense to me. There are two games that made Ridge Racer make sense to me in a way that made me appreciate the older games in the series in an entirely new way, and also set the stage for me to appreciate everything they would do afterwards. And it is R4, and it is Ridge Racer 64. The N64 version of Ridge Racer. Because I remember going up to Nintendo and them showing Ridge Racer 64, and they were like, by the way, there's other stuff you can do in this game. We kind of, we did some crazy stuff to the drifting, and and check this out. And they were doing 360 spins around corners, spinning the opposite way of the curve. And I'm like looking at this going, what the fuck are these people doing? And then when I played Ridge Racer 64, I could do that. And I was like, oh, something about all of that knowledge just clicked into place for me with their wild drift stuff. And all of that made me understand every other game in the Ridge Racer franchise so much better. R4, same type deal. Like being able to play it with a wheel and the force feedback and everything else, like helped me lock in the concepts, because Ridge Racer is a roller coaster. It's not a fucking driving game. Your car is like, especially around corners, your car is locked on a track, man. You lose traction on purpose and it just does the rest for you. It just goes whoop and whips you around the corner, and then your job is to get pointed straight again so you can apply acceleration and go. I was trying to drive it for the longest time like it was an actual car. Stupid me. What a fucking idiot. And R4 was one of the games that really helped lock that in for me. And so for me, the JogCon is an essential part of that experience. And it's made it so every time I pick R4 back up, I'm just like, this isn't really doing it for me. And I realized why. It's because I need to find my JogCon, pull it out and hook it up and see, and see if I can get it all working again. The Swift Drive from GameSir has definitely a similar look to it, but it is designed for modern racing games. It is the idea being, you're not going to buy a racing wheel. Who the fuck has room in their life for a racing wheel? Not you. Absolutely not. Why would you do that? What are you going to bolt a steering wheel to your desk? No. If you are, GameSir is also going to make something called the Turbo Drive. That is a racing wheel of sorts, that actually looks kind of awesome, but I'm not gonna buy a racing wheel, but a controller that has a wheel in it, that seems kind of cool. So I don't know. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It is not out yet. I don't believe that they have. It doesn't look like they've confirmed price or availability for the Swift Drive, but it's got a Hall effect encoder in it, according to this Verge article, and so it's a lot of the kind of modern technologies being used in some of these off-brand controllers that people are really well made, and applying it to this kind of like racing wheel sort of thing. And I think that sounds fucking awesome. So I'm very interested to kind of get a look at this thing. But I doubt it's going to be something that you're going to want to, maybe, if you can make some emulator adjustments and do what you need to do, maybe you could get this in a way that it mimics the JogCon's kind of specific sensibilities. But I doubt it's going to be something that you're going to pick up and go, hell yeah, let's play some R4. But if you play a lot of driving games on a controller anyway, this seems like maybe an interesting way to go for some of that stuff here. It has, some of these mock-ups are like the look at the controller. It looks like it has a left analog stick, face buttons, standard triggers, and then it almost looks like it has two laptop nubs. Kind of on either side of the steering wheel. Maybe that's meant for like paddle shifting. Maybe those are buttons. I don't know. I don't think the article gets into. Yeah, I don't think the article itself gets into what those buttons are for. And yeah, I'd be curious to know if it free spins. Like, can I play Kaboom with this really well? Because can you play Arkanoid with it? Will it work well in that type of paddle game or what have you? Like, that would be really great too, because those are kind of hard. That's a hard thing to do. I had to buy a crazy multi-$100 custom controller when I wanted to play Arkanoid on the Mister, and I don't think that guy makes those anymore. But that thing's a brick. That thing's a tank of a controller. Anyway. GameSir has that coming out. We haven't really. I don't believe they've announced any proper availability or what have you for it, but it's a promising looking weird thing. I'm not really into weird thing controllers. Like my needs on a controller are mainly going to be around kind of normal gamepad layouts or things that are fighting game appropriate. That's kind of the where I'm at with that stuff, and so I don't need a lot of other stuff, and I don't want a lot of clutter in my life when it comes to controllers at the same time. this being just a gamepad style thing that has a fat wheel on it, I really want to get a look at this thing and try it out for myself. It looks neato. And so that's kind of the stuff in and around CES. You know, Sony and Honda showed the car they're supposedly working on, and you know, they're taking pre-orders on a car that's supposed to ship at the end of this year that, you know, you can remote play PlayStation games in it if you want to. Like, okay, fine. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, I guess, man. I got an invite like 6 months ago or something. They had that car in LA somewhere, and they're like, "Do you want to come see this car?" And I was like, I should probably should I go see the car? I did not have time to go see the car, so I ended up not seeing the car. But they have been trying to, you know, show that car to video game people for a year or more now. They had it last CES. But they said like, oh, it's going to have like different themes for the dashboard and the instrument cluster and stuff. And so you can have Astrobot sound effects inside your car while you're driving it, which sounds fucking heinous. It sounds like a disaster. It sounds like a real distracting fucking thing. And I don't know that I can get behind that conceptually. The other thing I saw, and maybe this is not a big a deal, car stereos with Dolby Atmos support for spatial audio inside your car. Seems dangerous to me, just conceptually, the idea of spatial audio inside a car where you're trying to hear the things around you, and like, oh, we were listening to it, you know, I put on this Dolby Atmos mix of this 50 Cent mixtape, and there's all this gunfire, and I'm trying to drive a car, and all of it sounds like it's coming from behind me on the right side, and I did this, and I swerved this. I don't know, it just seems... I don't know. Yeah, yes, the Dolby Atmos fucking version of, you know, 2003 era 50 Cent mixtape. Why aren't people making Atmos mixes of the things that matter? That's what I say. But I don't know, like, you know, people are going to watch movies in their car, and then, you know, while they're driving, they're going to rig it up, because people always do, because people fucking suck. And they're going to be like, I'm watching The Rock while I'm driving my car. And then the audio of the sounds of The Rock was like, oh, whoops, we watched Heat while we were driving. And then the bank robbery scene came on and I crashed my car. I don't know, it seems like a fucking bad idea to me, man. But I don't know. All cars drive themselves now anyway, right? So what's the big deal? What's the big deal, right? Self-driving vehicles are the wave of the future. This is not the wave of the future, the wave of the now. Right? So whatever, man. I don't know. Watch you know, find your full 7.2 mixes of 80s porn films and get to work, man. And by that I mean have the car drive you to work on your morning commute. Enjoy your adult films in the car the way you were meant to, spatially. What are we even talking about? I don't even know anymore. The Polaris list has been issued and updated. This is if you go to polarisgamedesign.com, you can learn more about this. It is a weekend retreat for people who work in game design, and it's mostly kind of built as some sort of nonprofit, you know, like trade organization style stuff. Like, oh, game designers get together and compare notes and talk about the trials and tribulations of doing their thing and all of that. And that's valuable, especially in some, you know, you get to some of these more esoteric job titles. Not that game design is like this massively esoteric thing, but it's primarily a retreat around like a very specific style of job, and people get together and probably leave recharged with new ideas about how to tackle issues and so on. Anyway, they decided to get to some of their members together here. How they describe their organization is Polaris is a nonprofit committed to improving and refining the art and craft of game design. And in order to get a snapshot of current game design thinking and reference points, they wondered, what do working game designers talk about? What games do game designers reference behind closed doors? So they surveyed 167 professional game designers and asked them, what are the top 10 games that most influenced or inspired you as a game designer in any order? And so those designers submitted 10 games, and they built a list of the, what I guess you could say are, I guess the top 100 most influential or inspirational video games, according to this subset of game designers. And I thought that was kind of an interesting thing here. It's a wide-ranging list. I'm not going to read the whole list, or maybe I'll read the whole list. I don't know. Number 1 is Portal, which I think is kind of an interesting one. And this led to some discussion. There, some of the discussion around this list that popped up on Blue Sky was people saying like, well, Portal, why would it be Portal and not Doom? And why would it be this and not that? Is it because Portal is more recent than this? And I think to me, the answer is relatively simple. Is that, games are multifaceted, especially a game like Portal. A game like Portal is more than just a first-person puzzle game, right? It is the writing. It is the style of writing. It is the way that it shows its puzzles to players, the visual language it develops over the course of its runtime, the audio that helps with that, the way that game comes together. To me, like, it's the sort of thing that I think the games that are in the top 10 here, I look at and go like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense that a bunch of game designers would look at these games and say, these are the games. I'll read the top 10 here. Number 10, Outer Wilds. Number 9, Minecraft. Number 8, Spelunky. Number 7, Deus Ex. Which they have some quotes to go along with it here. Tom Francis gave a quote. Gunpoint started as an attempt to make a simplified 2D Deus Ex. So, yeah. At number 6 is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. At number 5 is Slay the Spire. At number 4 is Shadow of the Colossus. At number 3 is Dwarf Fortress. At number 2 is Civilization. And at number 1 is Portal. I think that makes a ton of sense. When we think about the things that something like, like Dwarf Fortress is a great example of like, that game feels like a game designer's dream because those guys went off and did the thing. They're like, we're going to design the hell out of this in a way, like we're going to account for all of these different things, like things that, modern games at the modern expenses that it costs to make a AAA video game and the time crunch and all this other stuff. People are never going to be able to do that, but everyone looked at that and looked at the mechanics and the way that stuff went and go like, man, that's amazing. And so I think that in terms of, again, people that are working in game design, what are the games that they think of and go like, oh man, like what are the games that maybe influenced them as they are working through the problems they're working through while they're making the games that they make? I think a ton of that makes sense. And I think something like Deus Ex makes a ton of sense in terms of like being an early example of a systems game. Like that's a game that, I think if you looked at Deus Ex with a certain lens, a lens that might say, I'm going to go on to be a game designer, Deus Ex seems like the sort of game that you would look at and go like, oh yeah, it's showing you things that you might not have considered were possible within the space of video games, right? Dwarf Fortress, kind of the same deal. I think Breath of the Wild, fits something very similar here in terms of that. The quotes here I think are fascinating here. Pam Punzelin says, influenced the way I understood how to design narratives and characters, along with teaching me techniques for building specific atmospheres for my players, or how to craft emotionally meaningful moments. When you think about Breath of the Wild, the size and the scope of that world, I think it's very easy to write Breath of the Wild off as like, it's a physics thing. It's, they sat down and made a survival game out of Zelda. They perverted the Zelda concept into this other thing. And I think that a lot of that stuff, it makes a ton of sense when it comes to like, games that are happening recently that are influencing you right now. If you were a game designer answering this question, like what are the games that are influencing you right now? You're not going to pick Doom all the time, but you might still pick Civ. You might still pick Dwarf Fortress. You might still pick Deus Ex. You might still pick Minecraft and Spelunky. These games are somewhat older because those things are games are, things that are doing things with systems or doing things to kind of facilitate storytelling. Like Shadow of the Colossus makes a ton of sense for a lot of different reasons, right? The quote from Max Nichols here, and then the Polaris game design people say that they are going to be posting more of the kind of quotes and things from people who responded over the coming months, and so I think that's kind of interesting to hear kind of people working as game designers discuss this stuff, because they're looking at this stuff obviously in a very different way than you or I, as people that are playing games, are looking at them, right? And so Max Nichols had this to say about Shadow of the Colossus. There's many lessons to take from this game, but the ones that really stuck with me were how it created feelings of awe and wonder, the way it used negative space in pacing, storytelling, and space, and the sheer sense of scale it achieved. I think that makes a lot of sense. That's something that even as someone who does not much care for Shadow of the Colossus, like, that is something I can look at and go, yeah, that makes an absolute ton of sense. Like, when you think about the things that Shadow of the Colossus does really well, and the things that at the time seemed like crazy. You're like, oh, I can't believe this game is doing this, and the way it's not just that it's big, but the way you interact with the colossi, the way you interact with them, the way you climb them, the way they're presented on screen, the way they create these moments to make these already big things seem somehow even larger and daunting. I think a lot of that stuff is really important. As it's not just like systems games, it's not just like, but obviously, Spelunky and Slay the Spire, you look at those and go like, yeah, I totally understand. If you want to read here's the rest of the list. Why not? At number 11, Half-Life. Number 12, XCOM. 13 is Journey. 14, the original Legend of Zelda. 15 is NetHack. 16 is Mario 64. 17 is Thief. 18 is Eco. 19 is Morrowind. 20, the World of Warcraft. I'm going to stop reading the numbers. We're at 20, it's World of Warcraft. Star Control 2, Pirates, Dark Souls, What Remains of Edith Finch, FTL, Papers, Please, Lode Runner, Super Mario Brothers, SimCity. At 30 is A Link to the Past, Chrono Trigger, Diablo, Final Fantasy VII, StarCraft, The Sims, Warcraft 3, Half-Life 2, Rogue, Tetris. At number 40 is Ultima 4, Super Metroid, Fallout, Metal Gear Solid, Planescape Torment, which you just knew was going to end up on here. I don't know if you've talked to any game designers ever, but Planescape Torment is going to end up on that list. At 45 is GTA 3. At 46 is Magic the Gathering. 47, Katamari Damacy. Mass Effect, The Walking Dead. At number 50 is Kentucky Route Zero. 80 Days, The Return of the Obra Dinn. Zork, Elite, Lemmings. Doom is at 56. Ultima Online is at 57. That makes a ton of sense. Ocarina of Time, Super Smash Brothers. At number 60 is Diablo 2. Majora's Mask at 61. Metroid Prime, BioShock, Braid, Civ 5, Fortnite at 66, Disco Elysium, Mule, which, yeah. Starflight, another, like, yeah, of course, yes. Game designers of a certain age, I suppose. Dungeon Masters at number 70, Super Mario Brothers 3, Quest for Glory, Super Mario World, The Secret of Monkey Island, SimCity 2000, Final Fantasy VI, Pokemon, like first gen, like red, blue, yellow. EverQuest is at number 78, Animal Crossing at 79, Rez at 80. I feel like games would be a lot cooler if Rez was a lot higher than 80 on that list. Battlefield 1942 at 81, Wind Waker at 82, Team Fortress 2, Fallen London, Portal 2 at 85, Elder Scroll Skyrim at 86, Crusader Kings 2, Dear Esther, Dishonored, Caves of Cud, Undertale at 91, Inside, Stardew Valley, Night in the Woods, Space Invaders at 95, King's Quest at 96, Lords of Midnight at 97, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy at 98, Pool of Radiance at 99, and Wing Commander at number 100. And so, yeah, Nurukip says, where the fuck is EVE Online? Just because the game is big and crazy doesn't mean it's influential, right? You know, like, what do you take away from EVE Online? Like, maybe games would be different if EVE Online was on this list, right? And again, if you somehow turned this podcast on in the middle of me reading this list, this comes to us from Polaris, which is a game design retreat. They were able to ask a bunch of working game designers, what are the top 10 games that most influenced or inspired you as a game designer in any order? And so they didn't ask for, they're not asking for the best games. They're asking for the games that influenced them as designers. And so obviously that's going to be a very different list than, hey, what's your favorite video game or whatever. And I think that's part of what makes this really interesting. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is not necessarily a game I would expect to see on this list. If you're not familiar, it's a text adventure game, much like Zork. Also from Infocom, makers of Zork, but it is based on the Douglas Adams book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And it has a real wild approach to puzzle solving, and it both connects to and diverges from the book in pretty fascinating ways. And at the time, for a text adventure, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was kind of fucking nuts. I think a lot of these games you would expect to see, they make a lot of sense, right? That, like, and again, this is because it's what's influential to you. That could be something released last week. You go like, man, I saw this thing in this game and no other game is doing this. And I think that this is really incredible. And so I think that's why you see some newer games on here alongside older ones. And I think that's really neat to see as well. Because a lot of different eras of gaming are represented on this list. Which is sensible. You're going to have people of a lot of different ages and what have you. Like, it makes sense that Lode Runner is on this list in terms of like an influential game design. That said, I don't know that I see a lot of Lode Runner's influence appearing on modern video gaming, But there are things about the way Lode Runner does business that you look at and go like, yeah, I don't know. These are some of the core building blocks of video games. And so it makes sense that some game designers would still have that in the back of their head knocking around one way or the other. Obviously the storytelling and things that Half-Life 2 did, were a very big deal at the time. And it makes sense that would be an incredibly influential game. Along with Rogue, along with Tetris, and some of these influences are probably direct and some are very indirect, right? Like, if you look at Breath of the Wild, there's probably a lot of applicable things to design today, which, that game's not that old. That you could look at and go like, oh, here's like an interesting way to tackle this sort of problem, or here's a systems-based solution to a thing, as more and more games go for that kind of systems-based thing. Like, I think it makes a ton of sense to for that game to have made the list. And games like Spelunky and stuff, I feel like, are self-evident. You just go like, oh yeah, of course game designers would be thinking about some of those pure design, in a lot of ways. Slay the Spire is a great, and I don't especially like Slay the Spire, but I think it's like, you look at it, you're like, okay, yeah, when we think about games and the types of things that they're trying to put in here. Scott Brody had this to say about Slay the Spire. Slay the Spire captures a ton of game systems into one cohesive package that I reference often. Simple roguelike structure, card game balance, and design expandability, and done without a huge breadth of content. Like, yeah, I mean, it's a very, like, Slay the Spire is a very tight, effective package, And yeah. So yeah, I found that to be a pretty interesting list. And again, I think it shows like the types of games on this list. I think says that they attracted a pretty wide range of designers across a lot of different age groups. They also have a list of the people who participated in the list, and it's, you know, just to pluck out a couple of names that you may have heard before. Brendan Chung is on here. Brenda Romero, Derek Yu is on here. Tom Francis is on here. Tanya Short is on here. Sam Barlow is on here. You know, so it's, you know, Ref Coster is on here. Rami is on here. Megan Fox is on here. You know, there's a it's an interesting range of respondents. And I hope they, you know, they mentioned kind of like, you know, maybe blowing this up and doing a little bit more, you know, kind of trying to reach a wider range of people the next time they do the list. I think it's a fascinating list. They also did a series collapsed version of it, you know, since, you know, I would say that like Diablo and Diablo 2 are fairly different things. And you could learn different things from each game just because, you know, Diablo 2 does more with online stuff or what have you, right? And so I think, you know, they did a series collapsed version that, you know, when you collapse all of the votes for all of the different games, like the series collapsed version of the list, the top 10 is Zelda, Mario, Civ, Final Fantasy, Portal, Elder Scrolls, Half-Life, Ultima, Dwarf Fortress, and Shadow of the Colossus, which I think is pretty interesting. When you collapse it that specific way. The Metroid, they collapsed Metroid, which I think is weird because Metroid Prime is such a different thing. Sony's got a patent out there. And, you know, hey, these companies file a lot of patents. This doesn't necessarily mean that anything's being worked on directly. They filed a patent, according to videogameschronicle.com. Basically, the idea being that you could, if you got stuck in a game, you could turn on like a ghost player, an AI-generated solution in a couple of different modes. One where a ghost, you know, basically it takes over the game and shows you the solution. And another one where it just goes ahead and plays the thing for you and gets you past a certain point that you're stuck in. I think I think is a sensible, you know, players get stuck and sometimes they just turn a game off, you know, and it's really, sometimes these things that get players stuck is relatively small. And so like, what if you got over this hump and moved forward? You know, the PlayStation 5 has this idea of this game hint system built in where they tried to do these context appropriate videos where like if you get stuck in a game, they could go like, oh, there's a video here you can watch if you want to see it. But like, even though they opened that up to, hey, you can contribute your own videos to this process, like they tried to make that a little bit more friendly because developers were not doing the work themselves to create those videos. But even still, even in light of that, so few games have the hints in there. And a lot of that stuff is not, I don't know, it's a little clunky a little bit. So, you know, an updated version of that concept that's just like, hey, I'm stuck, what the fuck do I do? And it can go, here's exactly where you're stuck, how you're stuck, and here's how you get past it, I think is actually like a good idea. I think that solving that problem by training AI on footage of games seems like an incredibly inefficient way to solve that problem. That to me, you know, the benefit of that is that you're potentially creating a universal solution that could work for any game. And then from there, of course, you would turn on safeguards that would, you know, prevent you from enabling this stuff in a multiplayer game and whatever else. But like it feels like this is something that you would just create as a mode in your game because you're gonna want something that's very custom. You're gonna want something that works in steps so as to not spoil the entire game for someone when they want to just get over the next little hump. And kind of work that way. So I don't know, something that is generic, that is designed to kind of work with any game, I think is, again, not an ideal implementation of this kind of concept. And so, this is, the Microsoft version of this right now is the Copilot stuff where you can basically ask a chat bot about a game. I don't think that that's an especially robust solution to this either. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's a weird... It's a weird thing. I think the Microsoft solution is like grotesque and like shitty. In my limited experience with it before, I was like, oh, this thing fucking sucks, dude. Why do this doesn't do... So the thing I'll say about the PlayStation solution is that I feel like it actually is the sort of thing that, if done properly, could get people over a hump. If they're like, oh shit, this is, I'm stuck here. I need to get past this and let people finish games. To me, that is the important thing. And I think that there are a lot of different ways to go about this that, you wouldn't need to deploy a bunch of fucking AI and training models and all this other stuff to do. I think there are ways to build, we've seen games do it with different like accessibility options of just like, fuck it, man, God mode, or hey, we're going to let you turn the difficulty way down so that you can definitely get past this. The catch is when you're stuck on a puzzle and you can't figure out the solution to a puzzle. And that's where we get these terrible solutions that modern games have tried where like, boy, the kid in God of War sure does solve all this shit before you can. Or, oh man, Aloy sure does fucking talk a lot, like Sony's first party stuff attempts at helping players by having a sidekick character or what have you, I think has been way less than ideal itself. And so I don't know, there's something to the idea of just like, hey, just, take the controls for me. PlayStation, take the wheel, and okay, I didn't see that there was a button there that I needed to hit, or I couldn't figure out the pattern here that I needed to do. Cool. All right, I'm going to move on from here. Sure, why not? Like, I think that's a decent way to attack this sort of stuff. I would say generally Sony's first party stuff has not been difficult enough to need most of this, but hey. I've been playing games for a long time. When we think about systems that are like these that are put into place, I think players immediately want to shit on them. To which I would say, yeah, you've been playing games for a long time. A lot of people haven't. And, they would like to sell consoles to those people too. And so it makes sense to have convenient options for people who might not have the time to bang their heads against it or the patience to bang their heads against it or whatever. And so I think something resembling this solution is not the worst thing in the world. Again, I do think that, using like trying to do this as like an AI solution and training an AI model on footage of the game, it turns it into a blunt instrument. In some ways, if you train it hard enough for long enough, I'm sure you get the results that you're after. But like, wouldn't it be easier if you just mandated, at least to your first party teams? I guess that's what, they've seen what happens when they try to make a system like the Game Hint system that requires work on the developer end. The work doesn't get done because they can't, they don't feel good about requiring it and saying, you must make hint videos for your game. So to me, this is them trying to find ways to take those developers out of the loop and say, fine, we get it. You're busy. You're not going to make these videos. You're not going to make this hint content. We get it. So we're going to come up with a one-size-fits-all solution that will work for all of this stuff. I don't know. Like it seems like a very clumsy solution, but again, developers have also already shown that they're not especially interested in doing that sort of work on their own. And why should they? Like adding more to their plate they're already trying to get a game out the door in the first place. They're going to go like, oh, well, for the PlayStation version of the game, we want to create this extra content that we, had to sit down and get someone to shoot a bunch of videos for of them getting through all the puzzles, and like, who the fuck has time for this? Also, we patched the game and these puzzles changed, so what do we do now? Like, there's a lot of stuff there that it makes sense why developers just would not do anything with it. Either way, it's just a patent. There's no guarantee that this is something that would ever actually work well enough to be effective to be put into a game. So who the hell knows? And that's it for the news. Well, okay. Anthem is shutting down. You've got less than a week to play Anthem. It shuts down on Monday, the 12th. I saw a story today saying that if you did not have Anthem installed, you are not able to install it anymore. So hopefully you were forward thinking enough to reinstall Anthem. I don't know if that's true on console or not. I know it is true on the I believe it is true on the PC side of things. They haven't been selling it for a long time. But I do believe my understanding is that I guess I could look here. Let's load the Electronic Arts app here on my personal computer. Background services have been disabled, preventing the app from starting. Turn on EA background services in the Windows Service Manager to fix the issue and get back to business. Let's take an ad break while I go fucking dig around and figure out, because I did disable a bunch of fucking shitty services, and the EA fucking update service is probably one of them. Let's take an ad break, and then we'll come back and I'll have figured this fucking shit out. Are you tired of wading through the nightmare that is researching hair loss online? Through Hims, you can get access to clear solutions, expert guidance, and an online process that takes the confusion out of care. Hims offers convenient access to a range of prescription hair loss treatments with ingredients that work, including chews, oral medication, serums, and sprays. These are doctor-trusted ingredients like finasteride and minoxidil, things that can stop further hair loss and regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. You shouldn't have to go out of your way to feel like yourself. Hims brings expert care straight to you with 100% online access to personalized treatment plans that put your goals first. There's no hidden fees, no surprise costs, just real personalized care on your schedule. Now, you can think of Hims as like a digital front door of sorts that helps you get back to your old self with a simple 100% online access to trusted treatments for real health concerns, all in one place. For simple online access to personalized and affordable care for hair loss, ED, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/Jeff. That's hims.com/Jeff for your free online visit. hims.com/Jeff. Featured products include compounded drug products, which the FDA does not approve or verify for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. See website for full details, restrictions, and important safety information. Individual results may vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Okay, I've got this service re-enabled. Let's try and launch the EA app. It is launching ever so slow. The Bikini Bottom bundle is here. You can get SpongeBob's house for The Sims 4, apparently. We'll go to the library tab. Yes, here is Anthem. Yeah, I am perfectly able to reinstall Anthem. So I don't know. There was a news report going around saying if you had not installed Anthem, you were not able to install Anthem. I will say that is not the case, at least for me. Let's actually start it downloading for real and make sure. Yeah, no, it seems like it is installing just fine. So you've got less than a week to play Anthem. Anthem, of course, was released in 2019. It's the BioWare game that fell up. I don't know, I don't know how to sum up Anthem. I whenever I think about the history of Anthem, I always go back to what I guess would have been E3 2018, if the game was out February 2019, where we sat down and played Anthem for the first time. It was at NVIDIA's booth. They had, they had setups for it there. It wasn't even, I guess it wasn't a booth. It was like a meeting room or whatever. But we went there to play some Anthem and sat down. And when you play Anthem for about 12 minutes or so, half an hour at most, you go, yeah, okay. Like, this feels really good. Like, the flight stuff is interesting. Like, there's some kind of cool ideas here in terms of how you move around and shoot. Great. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for showing it to me. And then you walk away and your brain fills in the blanks. You're like, well, I don't know. The rest of it's a BioWare game, I guess, right? Aha. No. Anthem was a mess, man. The next time I got to play Anthem was when I was playing the version that they put out for like people who got the game early. It was like I think it was like a 3-day early if you buy the technology version of the game or whatever, deluxe bonus pack. And so I played through it on PC and finished the game on PC. And pre-release, the game was just fucking boring. They had put all this like cooldown stuff on your ability to fly around. And so like the cool part about Anthem is that you're this dude in this kind of like small, nimble mech suit flying around the environment, shooting dudes and getting into, and fighting stuff. And you're like, this actually, okay, yeah, like I'm flying around and doing this. This actually feels really good. And so they made it so your suit overheats really fast. And you can't fly after that. And so you're brought to the ground where you can stand there and shoot people and use your like 2 or 3 abilities that are, like not entirely dissimilar to, the way Mass Effect had abilities that you used in the middle of combat. And the mission design and all of that stuff was Legion of Dawn Edition is apparently the name of their deluxe edition because I just finished installing it. The storyline, the mission progression, the way you went back to a central town to get your next mission and try to talk to everybody to advance all these little storylines and then go out on your next mission, and the back and forth of that was like painful. The length of time it took to get like back into the first person little city environment and then back out into the mech, and that transition just fucking sucked all of the flow out of that game. Out in the world, it was barren and basically empty. You didn't see other players that were off on other quests. Like Destiny had done quite a bit of that already. And so, you had a comparison point with Destiny in terms of like, oh, well, maybe it's going to be like this. And you're like, it's not even like that. And so you had these big-ish, boring, open environments where you could kind of go out on patrol and sort of do stuff, but there wasn't really much to do. And the mission design themselves were really underwhelming. And then all the rewards you got for completing those missions sucked. It's like a mild handful of guns and like, things you can apply to your loadout to provide different bonuses in different departments of, like, oh, this skill ability has a lower cool, whatever it was, like the typical kind of numbers adjustment type stuff that is so exciting in most video games. Anthem was just that. And then you get to the end game and there really isn't anything there. And they eventually rolled out, what was supposed to be kind of their version of a raid or their version of an update thing. And that was super underwhelming. But by then you knew the game was not going to make it. By then you knew that the game was not going to last. I don't know. Like there's a certain fondness that I have for Anthem. That said, don't ever mistake that for me thinking that Anthem is a good game. I finished Anthem. Anthem is not a good game. Anthem is a warning. Anthem is a missed opportunity at best. Like, there's like, you look at Anthem and you see potential all over it. That's the saddest part about Anthem. Is that you see flashes in it where you're like, man, if all of this stuff was in another better game, they'd really be on to us. Man, if this game was good, it'd be really good. It's got that problem. If you remember, there was that last ditch effort where, you know, a team at EA had put together this idea of like, here's what Anthem 2.0 would be like. And it was kind of an aggressive reboot of the game that would change a lot of the systems and change a lot of the way the game was, a lot of the way the game flowed, changed a lot of the loot. And they apparently pitched that internally to EA. And I assume that EA looked at some sort of chart or graph and said, okay, if we do this, if we spend more money on Anthem, what will happen on the other side of it versus if we do nothing with Anthem? And they, you know, must have run the cost benefit analysis on that and said, yeah, I mean, even if you quote unquote fixed Anthem, it's not going to, like, the financial story is not going to change dramatically in a way that's going to, like, it's not worth it. We're just flushing money down a toilet if we give you the rope to go try to quote unquote fix Anthem. When I hear about what their plans were for the Anthem, you know, reboot or the Anthem 2.0 or whatever you want to call it, I look at it and go like, yeah, you're fixing problems that existing players know about. You're not enticing new players to play it. You know what I mean? It's the sort of thing like, oh yeah, if you fixed this stuff, the people who already gave up on Anthem might come back to it a little bit, but you're not turning it into a winner. You're turning it into something that's like, oh yeah, this is probably what it should have shipped like in the first place. Like, yeah, it's not bad. Like that would be that feels like that would be the outcome if they were allowed to reboot Anthem. It wasn't something that you looked at and were like, oh, if they did this game would be amazing. Holy shit, we would all buy it and play. It was just like, yeah, I don't know. Like they already had their shot. And this is what came out of it. Fixing it is you've already lost a certain percentage of the audience who already has it in their head what Anthem is. You should probably just move on. It's one of those things where it's like you always want to see what could have been, and you hate the idea that, you know, creative people with ideas to make games better are not allowed to do it by the bean counters or whatever. But it is kind of a scenario that I look at and go like, yeah, there's really no, it really doesn't seem like there's any scenario here where Anthem comes out a winner. And so, yeah, you're probably right to just cut off support. And so they said, hey, we're not going forward with this, but we're not going to shut the servers off either. And now here we are all these years later. They've felt that that Anthem has kind of been quietly swept under the rug for enough years that now they can shut the servers off. Anthem is a game that illustrates the danger of having a very aggressive looking and long roadmap for your game, right? Because they had talked about all the stuff they were going to add to Anthem, and here's all the things they're going to do, and they're going to put this in Anthem, and then you know, in 6 months down the line, we're going to do this, and then there's going to be this chapter of this raid, and this, and, you know, they had some of the different things that they wanted to do with Anthem, but like they were so busy trying to, you know, put out the fire that was Anthem that they had to, you know, step away from a lot of their update plans, which is probably just as well, because I don't think there would have been any people around to experience those updates, you know. Last time I fired up Anthem was, I don't know, a couple months ago, and I ran into a couple of other players, and it was weird. I think the last time I fired it up was the day they said they were going to shut it down, which probably brought a handful of people back to the game that very day. Blue Brain asks, is the timing because the buyout? No, the timing of this, I believe, was announced well before the buyout was probably even, you know, in the works. They've said they said that when the servers were going to shut down quite a while ago. So it's I don't know. It is kind of a sad story, you know, because again, you know, like Anthem is the sort of thing that if you remove everything you know about Anthem as it shipped and that part of the story pre-release, there are things that you look at and go like, yeah, there's something here. there's something here. You know, the story itself, I think, is actually really boring. Like there's a lot of stuff about it that you just go like, ah, this is a shallow and grindy mess of a video game. Zorja asks, was Anthem better than Mass Effect Andromeda? Fuck. I'll put it to you this way. You know, it's a different. Probably the clearest thing I could say is I finished Anthem and like bailed on Mass Effect Andromeda. I did not enjoy playing Mass Effect Andromeda. Maybe that's a little different nowadays. You know, people, you know, they've patched, they turned the gun around. They've fixed Mass Effect Andromeda to a certain degree. But Jesus Christ, no. That game sucks so much. But the reason I feel that way is because you can have a visceral reaction to Mass Effect Andromeda because it's the fourth game in a franchise that was one of the best. Anthem doesn't have that lineage. The only reaction you can have about Anthem is, man, BioWare sure did make better games than this. But you know, like Mass Effect, you can get angry about because of, you know, the fate that has befallen Mass Effect over the years. Name one Anthem character, says Steel Knight 2000. Nope. I couldn't even give you like an archetype of a character other than just like guess and say like, I don't know, there's like a grizzled soldier guy. Oh, there's like the people that were on your ship. There's like the guy, and then like you've both been through some kind of weird thing with the Anthem, the technology, whatever the fuck it was, and he's a gruff guy. That's the best I can do. But also like name a Mass Effect Andromeda character. Like I don't. Nope. I don't have any of that. PB. Oh yeah, PB. PB was she was the backwards gun lady, right? Ryder? Sure. People are saying that Ryder is a character in Mass Effect Andromeda. Fucking okay. Yeah. All right. I'm not going to fight you on that, but sure. Yeah, PB. PB. Ryder is the main character? Okay. Yeah. All I know is that it was not Shepard. What the fuck is it? Like, who the fuck is Ryder? Like, I don't know. Whatever. Yeah, it's man, BioWare, huh? Yikes. They say they're going to make another Mass Effect game. I mean it when I say that I don't like, that doesn't seem like something that I necessarily want, or rather something that I'm ready to believe them on, I guess, at this point. You know, after Anthem, after Mass Effect Andromeda, especially after Mass Effect Andromeda. But, you know, I thought that the new Dragon Age, I thought the latest Dragon Age game is pretty cool for what it is. And so, like, you know, you'd think that would give me some kind of hope about what they do next. But, you know, the path for Dragon Age to make its way to market was so fucking insane and twisted. From like, hey, here's this multiplayer thing, to, oh God, we need to not do that. And we did, you know, like there are things about Dragon Age, about that specific Dragon Age game, where you see like, you know, this is, you know, not necessarily the best Dragon Age game. But people have been saying that since Dragon Age 1. people have been mad about the twists and turns that Dragon Age has been taking from like a genre mix perspective since that franchise decided to make a second one. So I don't know. You know, you can only take that stuff so far. But you know, like that game was cool. It was very different from the other Dragon Age games, and I still, you know, it is not the Dragon Age game I would recommend to people, you know, for their first Dragon Age experience or what have you. But you know, for all of the rage that people kind of aimed in that game's direction, I don't think it deserved any of that. Like that game is pretty much fine. Like Veilguard is totally all right. For what it is, like, you know, it's not an amazing video game, and Dragon Age was at times an amazing video game, and so to have one that's just like, oh yeah, this is all right, and this is still pretty okay. You know. So yeah, you got less than a week to play Anthem. You know, you could probably find a disc copy of that for not a lot of money if you decided you wanted to like grind through every trophy in the game, which I doubt you'd be able to do. Like, I imagine the person who's going to play 24/7, 24/6, we're out of days of Anthem just to try to get every single one of those PlayStation trophies or Xbox achievements or whatever. That would be, I didn't finish it on PlayStation. I played it primarily on PC. So, you know, there's trophies that I never got, you know, what am I going to, I guess my work is cut out for me. I've got Anthem installed on the PlayStation sitting right here. I mean, you know, like, it's time to get to work, right? Yikes. I did actually think that when they announced they were shutting down Anthem, there, like, the thing I did say to myself was, I should get the rest of the trophies in this, or at least as many as I can. But the problem there is, you know, for doing that is like, you have to fucking play Anthem. And so I played a couple of missions of Anthem the day they announced it was getting shut down, and it was a great reminder of just like, oh, dude, I don't want to fucking play Anthem. Jesus Christ. I already did this. I finished this game. I don't know. No. What? No. Why would I do this to myself? Looking ahead, you know, of course, it is 2026, and that means a new year with new games. I've been looking over the list of games that have kind of confirmed release dates for the year and trying to kind of parse out, like, what are we looking at for 2026, huh? What's going on? You know, 007 First Light just moved into May, and that's going to, right now, that's the same week as Lego Batman. I'm trying to think, like, looking at this list, like, what's the first thing that's up this year that's, like, kind of a big deal? There's the Animal Crossing update that's coming out next week. 2XKO will come to consoles, which I guess is good if you don't want to install all their fucking bullshit. Rumblefish 2 is coming to Switch 2. That's weird. It's just weird. That game from the Game Awards that looked, let's say, I don't know, is suspect the word? High Guard is out January 26th. That is the game from kind of Apex Legends developers. That I don't know, that trailer did not fill me with any sort of strong desire to check that out, but that's probably something I will at least take a look at when it does come in. But I don't know, man. Code Vein 2, Front Mission 3 remake, like, that's kind of your January. Romeo's a Dead Man is on for February. All these dates are subject to change, of course. Neo 3, early February. That reimagined Dragon Quest VII is out February 5th. So that seems like it has the potential to be amazing or awful. Nothing in, I can't. It's hard to. I think nothing in between. Nothing in between. Romeo is a Dead Man seems like it could be cool. If nothing else. So there is that. Mario Tennis is out February 12th. Yeah, there's this City Hunter game, like the remake of the old City Hunter game, out in February. That could be kind of neat. Resident Evil is out the end of February. There's like a bunch of like older RE games coming to Switch 2 in conjunction. Oh, not a bunch, but how about 2? But like Requiem is coming out on the 27th. Also out that same day on Switch 2 is RE7 and Resident Evil Village, which is a lot of Resident Evil for Switch 2 fans, I suppose. How are we feeling about the Switch 2, by the way? Obviously Metroid Prime is a Switch 1 game, and so, the Switch 2 version of it is only going to be bumped up so far, I suppose, but I feel like the reality has been settling in around Metroid Prime for a lot of people of like, oh yeah, huh? Jeez. This game's not very good, huh? I keep thinking about wanting to play more of it just out of curiosity, but like I feel no actual pull to return to that thing. It's like, And, the Switch 2 has become, the PlayStation 5 has become my son's machine, and the Switch 2 has become my daughter's. She plays, she's playing a lot of Kirby Air Riders on it still. Yeah, Embol says, careful what you wish for is the lesson from Metroid Prime 4. I thought there was kind of an interesting, there's an interesting interview that hit Famitsu that I saw somewhat translated over at VGC. Your home for Scotch energy drink coverage. I don't mean Scotch like drinking Scotch. I mean, it's an interesting interview that went in Famitsu because these it feels like, and so I guess the thing I'll say is that the person they were interviewing about Metroid Prime 4 was not credited, and so it's like this nameless developer, a nameless individual from the Metroid Prime 4 development team. I don't think this person is necessarily speaking out of like off the record or anything like that. It's not like that. I think that it's just like they did not run the person's name for whichever reason. But the quotes in this interview, or the translated quotes, I should say, are fascinating because it suggests that the team knew that maybe they had been on this game a little too long, and that player tastes had perhaps changed a little bit. At the start of the project, perhaps due to the influence of Breath of the Wild, we saw a lot of comments on the internet saying, we want to play an open world Metroid. However, Metroid's core element of increasing the amount of explorable areas by unlocking powers is not very compatible with the freedom to go anywhere from the beginning of open world games. Thus, we thought to design a limited area that could be freely explored and have that be a hub that could connect to other areas. Then we thought that if we could move around on the bike in a satisfying way in that area, it could be a segment that mitigates the tension from exploration and paces the whole game. In the end, the game took much longer than expected to finish, and we realized that players' impressions towards open-world games had changed. That being said, development had already been reset once before, so backtracking development again was out of the question, so we resolved to move forward with our original vision. During this time, shooting games and action games went through evolutions with an increase in game speed in particular, but taking in those changes would have made it difficult to construct the tempo of an adventure game, so we actively chose not to take them into account. Therefore, I think this game is pretty much divorced from the changing of the times. I think that's interesting. It's like, that feels like a very frank kind of admission on their part. Again, and it's, it's just kind of attributed to the team, the development team of Metroid Prime 4, as opposed to any sort of individual. But it feels like a fairly realistic acknowledgement of just like, yeah, man, this thing was in development for a long time, and we went down this road because it seemed like that's what players wanted, and then they didn't. The thing they go on to say is that the thing where you control the charge beam, the like psychic ability stuff, was something that was in the previous design that they had scrapped. That was kind of one of the things they carried over. They liked that idea of being able to kind of control the beam, and they hatched the nonsense. The nonsense of like Samus has psychic abilities. Like that is something that kind of was a through line through both of those projects, even the canceled one and the one that finally shipped. And I don't know, man. I think when you think about that as a guiding principle of like, hey, we want to have this open world that guides as a connector to the areas where you play the game. I mean, that's not unlike something like ODST, right? Like Halo ODST is very much a superfluous open world with a bunch of Halo levels strung together. The last Gears game, Gears 5 or whatever, is like the open world in that Gears game is extremely that. It's like, here's an area where you go around on a vehicle to get from place to place, and it kind of changes the tempo a little bit, and then you duck under this log, and surprise, it's a Gears of War level. The most straightforward Gears level that they've ever made. Like that's a very, a fairly common concept of your kind of hub and spoke model for level design and open world construction. But and as someone who's not finished the game and at this point probably won't, like talking to other people that played Metroid a lot more than I did and seeing a lot more of it for myself, like that open world just feels like it is bad. There are ways to make a good open world, even if the open world is not necessarily the focus. There are ways to kind of string these sequences together and give you a little bit more to do. For them to have hatched upon this idea of like, no, the open world, you're going to go around and get all these green crystals. What else are you going to do? We got a motorcycle. Do you have any amiibos? We've got a motorcycle that you might be interested in. Like that. They kind of didn't do the job there. They didn't make the right decisions there about that part of the game. And I think that is something that I think would have smoothed over a lot of the other parts of the game too, if they had kind of nailed the more open aspects of it and given the player something a little more to engage with in some of those sequences. That I think would have would really kind of solve a lot of the problems with the game. It's interesting that they stuck to the green crystal thing as like hard as they did, like when you read these quotes, you hear about a team that wasn't necessarily fully confident in the game they were making, and so I feel like to double down, triple down even on this idea of like, no, you got to fill this meter all the way up. And, I'm sure they had late game play testers that were coming away from it going like, yeah, I played through what felt like the entire game. And then before I could get to the last sequence, I had to drive around and crush these crystals for a while like that. It wasn't, they had to have gotten some of that feedback pre-release. I wonder if it was worse before, if the meter took even longer to fill, and this is the adjustment they made, right? If like testers came back to them and said like, yeah, dude, this part fucking sucks. And they're like, okay, we'll turn it down a little bit, but it's still like way too much for the average player or whatever to want to do, right? I don't know. Like that would be my question that I would want to know more about. But you have that and you mix in with that levels that, like, yeah, the parts of the game that people do like, people don't seem to like it nearly as much as the previous games in the franchise. And, and here we are. Right. And I'm sure that game was such a bear development wise, it's a game that they had to reboot you know, and took them a very long time to get on shelves. I really, you know, it's hard to envision a scenario where we see another Metroid Prime game anytime soon. That said, I do, you know, it does feel like there's still like quite a bit of player affinity for something like Metroid Dread and some of that. So as much as that feels like an outside shot because of just how infrequently Metroid games get made in the first place, it does at least seem like if they were to make another Metroid game anytime in the foreseeable future, it would probably not be a Prime game, which is good news for me. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's just a weird turn of events, you know, and it's not the sort of thing you expect. I don't know, like first party Nintendo, you expect a certain level of well, I don't know. It's funny to reconcile like these this sort of reality and the talk that they have in there about like, well, we can't reboot the game again. It's funny to kind of, well, funny is not the word, but you know, it's interesting to kind of lay that up against the idea that Nintendo is fairly willing to delay a game when it needs it, you know? And yeah, I don't know. There you are. So yeah, I don't know. Like the between that and, you know, like the release of first party games on the Switch 2, all of it seems very situational. All of it seems like it doesn't feel like they have very many games that are as widely appealing to broad swaths of their average player base. As like, you know, when we think about a typical Mario game, when you think about a, you know, your typical kind of traditional Zelda game, the stuff they've issued certainly has its fans. There are people that really like Metroid Prime 4. There are people that really like, you know, Kirby Air Riders. Mario Kart World is a game that did very well. It was also part of a bundle. And yeah, I don't know. The conversation around Mario Kart World hasn't necessarily been like people, you know, it doesn't feel like everyone is super thrilled about it. It feels like that there is a bit of a mix there. With just the nature of that game. You had people going like, oh, I can't believe they patched out the thing that let me, you know, not do the style of race that they made for this game. And, you know, all of the like, you know, race to the next event type stuff that they put in because they were making an open world game. You know, like it just feels like that made that game a little bit more divisive than you would expect. And that always felt kind of weird. There's always drag and drive, right? Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting position that Nintendo finds itself in, as like, you know, hardware sales across the board seem a little iffy, or they may be facing down a situation where they have to raise the price of the Switch 2 again. Like, what's their lineup look like for the rest of this year, and where are they at? Like, it doesn't, like, I felt pretty positive about the Switch 2 pre-launch, and I feel like some of the things that console is, you know, like had going for it, or potentially interesting directions they could take around the mouse control and some of the other the power of the system, and what does that mean for third parties, and, you know, third party development on the Switch 2, and like it just feels like everything has been slightly slower to materialize than I guess I would have thought. And so, you know, that's not to say the sales are bad, right? I mean, people are buying hella Switch 2s. But it doesn't feel, it feels off. It still feels off. And I don't think it's as simple as like, oh, there's no Zelda, there's no Mario, like, you know, there's no big franchise game or what have you, but like aspects of this feel a little weird right now. We'll see, you know, like again, you know, Resident Evil Requiem simultaneously shipping on Switch 2 alongside other consoles is like, that's a good sign for third party support, especially out of Japan, and we'll kind of see how that kind of continues to materialize. Pokemon Pokopia. Chromopokopia. No? That's out early March 5th to be exact. And that looks kind of neat. I don't know. Like, Coming into March though, like it's what else do we got here? You know, Screamer is out late March. Taito Milestones 4 is coming to the Switch. Mega Man Star Force Legacy Collection. It doesn't feel like, I mean, I feel like there were games in the end of March. Was it 007 that was here originally and it got moved? It felt like originally there were more games. Marathon. Marathon is March also. It just doesn't have a date yet. Like March is that end of fiscal year dumping ground of like, hey, we delayed this game as long as we possibly can, and now we need this game to start generating sales. Oh God, you need to put this out. And so an end of March used to end up being like kind of the first hot period of the year. But this year it doesn't seem to be all that big. I am extremely interested in Marathon. I really want to know how that's going to go. I think that's such a fascinating tale, the story of it coming to market and the things they had to do late in it and the reactions to the play tests, and now the added kind of like, I think it's probably a positive thing for them. I think the idea that Arc Raiders ended up being as popular as it was at the same time that the game was getting delayed, you do start to wonder like, hey, I wonder if they're going to be able to make the adjustments they need to make in Marathon and, you know, maybe appeal to some of the audience that is playing Arc Raiders. And it'll also be an interesting challenge for Arc Raiders, right? Like, here's a direct competitor, you know, in a lot of the same style of game. Like, will Marathon peel off any of the Arc Raiders fan base, or will they go over there for a week and go back to Arc Raiders? Will Arc Raiders plan a big late March update to try to blunt the launch of Marathon a little bit? Like, I would assume so. I would if I were them, because why take the chances? So yeah, I don't know. I think that's an interesting story, if nothing else. Like, when I look at the artwork of Marathon and where it's at, I think there's some stuff there that I like the look of it. I think there's some kind of some neat looking shit in that thing. On the other side of the changes they made. So let's see, man. I'm really curious, really curious to see how they go with it. This conversation used to kind of be about Arc Raiders and Battlefield, right? We were talking about Steam player counts and so on. I was writing up something about Battlefield because I'm kind of putting together something about a handful of games that came out last year that I'll post on the Patreon when it's ready. And I started writing about Battlefield, and I was like, man, what a success story for Battlefield, and they really kind of pulled it off, and but why? Like trying to dig into this why is Battlefield, what makes it different than the last few launches, really? And then I kind of checked in on some of the player count stuff, and boy, that game is out of the Steam charts. Like it is really kind of fallen off in terms of at least the Steam player numbers, right? I mean, consoles are what they are, and we don't really, but you can kind of assume that there is at least something of a correlation there, if nothing else. And so let me hang on. It's not to say that the Battlefield 6 numbers are terrible, but there are 90,000 players playing it right now. That is kind of around their peak that they've been having lately for the day. But 3 months ago, they had 750,000 people playing that game. Obviously, players are going to short time it and move on or whatever and all of that, but that seems like a much faster fall off than I would have anticipated, and a much steeper one as well. So for it to have kind of fallen so far down that list is probably not great news. Arc Raiders, meanwhile, 350,000 people right now You know, it's the number 3 game. It's been up there kind of since it launched or whatever. Yeah, they rolled out Red Sec and people didn't really like it. And I don't know. I tried Red Sec and did not much care for it. But it's interesting. The launch of that game is the success of Battlefield 6 just that it did not have the same level of technical problems that the last couple of Battlefield games did at launch. You know, you remember, like, you know, the last several Battlefield games, it's always like launch week is a shit show. And you're like, oh, the server crashes at the end of every match. And so this thing, everyone gets kicked out and there's this, and it's, you know, like all this stuff is completely busted. And, you know, like the launch week of Battlefield games have been bad in the past. This year or this time out, like it launched fine, right? Like it did not have massive problems. It did have issues with like, oh, some of the aiming and some of the shooting stuff is messed up. And Striker in the chat here says that team balance is non-existent and gun balance is super weird. Yeah, so maybe as people get deeper down into the unlocks, they realize like, oh, this game needs some work. But like it's, you know, it is not dramatically different. Like the changes in Battlefield 6 you look at and go like, oh, you know, and I appreciate them. I think that the stuff they did around opening up more types of weapons to more types of classes and whatever, I think that stuff is fine. And yeah, it's, you know, people are complaining that there are not enough large maps, which I feel like this is not the first Battlefield where that has been the kind of early complaint about it. Yeah, I don't know. Like it's an interesting sort of thing when you look at what the last game was and the changes they've made from there to there. Like it's sort of, I don't know. People were quite excited about Battlefield around its launch, and then yeah, it just feels like it maybe does not have the juice, or has not had the juice. But yeah. There's an interesting, I don't know, you could probably like dig into that a little deeper and figure it out. Pragmata comes out end of April. It's April 24th. It feels like that demo did good for that game. People seem like that once they have played some of it and wrapped their mind around, which is how it worked for me as well. Like seeing the trailer for Pragmata, I was like, okay, I guess. And then, but playing it and going, oh, okay, this is how this kind of do this thing while you're fighting mechanic works, and that's actually really neat. And yeah, I don't know. People seem like they have come away from that demo feeling more positive about Pragmata, which is cool. People are less than Pragmata about Pragmata. No, all right, fine. That Diablo 4 expansion is also out late April. Saros, the new Housemarque game, is out there as well. Yesterday, I decided to load up Diablo 4 for the first time in a while because I was like, oh, well, I should see what the Paladin looks like. And I don't know, Diablo 4 is not a bad game. Maybe I'll check it out and create a new character and do this. And then I created the new character, and it asks you if you want to skip the campaign or create a seasonal character or not, and all of that. And then it just gave me 10 skill points right out of the gate. And I didn't know where to spend any of them because I don't know what the fuck to do with a paladin. And so I'm looking at the basic attacks going like, well, do I want to do this? Do I want to do the sword and shield thing? Or do I want to do the rush forward lunge thing? Or do I want to do this? And I reached a pretty, I reached the decision point pretty early there of just like, yeah, I don't want to do this. I already have a character that I like. I already have a barbarian that I really like playing, and I don't want to make another one. And so my argument against their seasonal model kind of still stands of just like, yeah, I'm invested in my character. I've put a lot of work into that character. I want to keep putting work into that character. I don't want to make another one just to play for 3 months or whatever these seasons are. Like, I think that's dumb. I don't want to fucking do that. I'm not going to fucking do that. And so, you know, adding new character classes to Diablo 4 is something that I don't care about because I like the character I play. I don't necessarily need another one. And And so I think that their attempt to kind of like add seasons, which they did in the previous game, I think that sucks. I'm not playing this game enough to care about that shit. Like I want to make my character even more fucking badass. Like there are still Paragon points to be earned. Like that character could still be more powerful. But they're like, no, you should create a new character and do all the seasonal stuff. I'm like, fuck this. No. Like, stop trying to, like, it just feels like such raw fucking engagement horse shit. Chuck says, I had no idea they added Paladin. Guess I'm playing Diablo now. Hey, I'll give you a warning before you go and do that. You have to purchase the expansion that's not out until April in order to get access to the Paladin right now. It's not something that comes with the base. The base video game. So, know that before you go dive in. The release calendar starts to get really thin around May, where we've got 007 and Lego Batman and apparently R-Type Dimensions 3. And then after that, it all just sort of falls apart. You have like Phantom Blade 0 in September. You've got GTA 6 in November. And then a long list of games that are supposed to come out sometime this year with no kind of set date. And that's when you get into like, I don't know, Assetto Corsa Evo. Blokes on Blocks? Anyone? Bubsy 4D, perhaps? Apparently someone is making a Danger Mouse game. Sure. Anything else on this list that really jumps out? I don't know, man. The Genesis version of Eartheon is supposed to be coming out. Fallout 4 for the Switch 2. Yeah, I don't know. They've got Fable on this list. Forza Horizon 6 is supposed to be out this year. Indiana Jones on Switch 2. Yeah, I don't know, man. That Marvel 1943 game is, I guess, just listed as sometime in this year, as well as Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls. Wolverine is supposed to be out in the back half of this year, but does not have a date. How much do you, I guess like that's an interesting kind of question. Like how much are you invested in Wolverine, Like I feel like, and I very much want to play that game because I think a cool Wolverine game is cool. Like that X-Men Origins game, the Wolverine game they put out was, was still okay. But I don't know. Sometimes I don't know. Maybe it's just some of the circles I run in or whatever. But like it being kind of another big single player first party Sony game. I think there's a genuine exhaustion with those that applies to just about everything. And I see people that are just like, ugh. I think when I look at Wolverine, I see like, I look at it and I think that's a game I will play. And I hope it's great. But I don't really, I'm not super excited about it. It would be hard for me to be super excited about any kind of Marvel anything, really. But Wolverine is, pretty high on the list of things I would care about as far as a Marvel thing goes. And what they've shown has looked really nice. I just, I wonder, if the kind of Marvel fatigue that seems to be permeating the movie stuff, if that's kind of impacted, I don't know. People seem excited about the Avengers trailer or stuff in some way, but I don't know. Marvel stuff just seems like it's in such a strange place these days. It's hard to get a firm grasp on what the streets are saying about Marvel. Yes, when will we get our Paste Pot Pete game? I mean, that's like, come on, what are we doing? Yeah, I don't know. Looking over the rest of this list, this Prince of Persia: Sands of Time thing is listed on here as a 26 release, and I believe it when I see it. You know what I mean? The Slam City with Scottie Pippen re-release is supposed to be out sometime this year. That seems like a very dumb thing to be doing. Oh yeah, I guess they did the Super Mario Wonder DLC will be out sometime in the first half of this year. That's mildly interesting, I guess. That'd be cool to see some more of that. And yeah, I don't know. Like the list of announced games with no date is not necessarily full of like hot hits either. The Halo 1 remake is on there, and there's some stuff that we don't know if it'll make it out this year, right? Like is the new Gears going to make it out this year? Is anyone going to care? We need to see the Rhythm Heaven date. We need to get Rhythm Heaven out here. You want to turn around the fortunes of everyone. There you go. Rhythm Heaven will cure disease. It will solve the world's problems. We just need to get it out there and into people's hands. And everything else will kind of fall into place from there, right? Let's check out some emails. podcast@guard.bike is the email address. Chop wrote in just now to say, I was in an Anthem reboot focus group. Back when they were trying to reboot Anthem, I was in a focus group for EA and I got to play and see what the reboot would look like. All they did was add a mothership base that would float above the map, and you would fly from that to different objectives around the map. You would return to the ship and turn in and get the next objective. It sucked ass. The only good things was the player count in the map was up to 16 people, and there were no limits to flying anymore. It felt like they were trying to rip off Destiny. It was just large bullet sponge bosses everywhere. Also, they tried to pay me with an Amazon gift card when they advertised cash. I demanded the cash. It was the last focus group I did for them. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. That doesn't sound good. That doesn't sound like it would be a good way to fix Anthem. I mean, it sounds like that would be like slightly better than what Anthem is. That does sound like an improvement over what Anthem actually is. So it at least has that. But yeah, man. Ted writes in, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, and says, I've been playing games with the controller as long as I can remember, so it's like muscle memory. My daughter really wants to play games with me, but modern controllers are so intimidating. Where did you start? What controller? What game? So for me, like the starting point for me literally was this friggin' Saturn controller, which is not like this has its downsides, but this hooked up to the Mister, playing stuff like Pac-Man with cheats turned on. So like loading up the NES version of Pac-Man and turning on like invincibility, or like ghosts stay blue until you eat them, or whatever. They played a fair amount of Strawberry Shortcake for the Atari 2600, which is like the mix and dress up game. They had fun with that, and that made them use the D-pad and move it around. They had also picked up D-pad skills from using remote controls on like a Roku and an Apple TV, which they can navigate like it is second nature at this point, and which is terrifying in and of itself. And now that my daughter can read and spell, she can open up the Spotify thing and search for songs. And so we've been listening to Golden from K-pop Demon Hunters quite a bit lately on the television. Quite a bit. And it's not a bad song. I don't know. It's not a bad song. I just don't want to hear it 10 times in a row. It's not as good as the Purple Pie Man's theme from Strawberry Shortcake on the 2600, let's say. So yeah, they started with stuff like that. But not for long. Like it wasn't, like I would let them try to play Super Mario Brothers, and that's where the problem was. Like it was hard to jump over a pipe. It's hard to run and jump. The other thing we ran into, especially when it came time to play Strawberry Shortcake for the GBA, is that the sensible button order, Nintendo's reverse button bullshit, flies in the face of this. And so it would say hit the B button, but I've got B mapped to A because it should go BA, but the buttons are labeled AB. And so it would say hit B in the game, and then they'd have to hit A. And I wasn't going to reverse the buttons for them because then everything was going to be backwards and ridiculous. And I was like, this is not these solutions are not awesome. And so, that sort of that was another thing that had to be kind of handled. But it was, I don't know, like, I'm trying to think, like, where they started actually playing stuff. With my son, he started playing Katamari and got way into that. And so that started with him. And then when he finished those, he got way into Goat Simulator. And I think Goat Simulator is the thing that helped them both get really good at modern control concepts. Goat Simulator, as I've said, is maybe not a game for super young kids, because there's a little bit of the devil in there. It is about goats, and you are like sacrificing scarecrows to make zombies, and like there's a little bit of the devil up in there, and so you'll have some splaining to do when your kids get to certain parts of Goat Simulator, and you're like, well, that's just, I don't know. Some people it's just the devil. It's cool. Devil's cool. Don't worry about it. But yeah, so that was sort of the thing that solidified it for them, and now, like I said, they're playing Astro Bot without much issue, and that's been pretty cool to watch that progression happen. My daughter is playing Kirby, and she played a bunch of Mario Kart before that, and got to be okay at Mario Kart 8 or whatever it is, the Switch 1 Mario Kart. And so she was kind of ready for that style of driving game. I tried to, they tried playing some Forza Horizon 5, and just the open world, I think, was kind of confounding to them, and hitting things that would make them stop and having to go in reverse. Like, that's still kind of tricky for them in some driving games. And so there's a little bit of that there. But yeah, I don't know. Like, that's been the path that we've taken, and it's mostly worked out okay. And I don't know that I would necessarily immediately recommend that exact progression, but I do think that Goat Simulator is a really good, because it's low stakes. I think the thing you want to find, and it's why Pac-Man with cheats was a really good teacher for D-pad stuff, because you need to kind of lower the stakes and let them just run around and do shit. And if they're dying all the time, or getting hit, or feeling like they're failing, and there's a respawn, it's like kind of the frustrating thing about Astro Bot for these kids, is every time they mess up, the whole screen goes dark, they respawn at a checkpoint. It's fast, but it's still a very clear notifier of you fucked up. And now you got to do this again. And there's nothing else you can do until you do this. So games that are a little more like, fuck it, just go over here. Just go do something different. That are very low stakes. Like, I think that has worked out really well. Goat Simulator has been really perfect for that, like that style of game. And so I would look for something like that, if you can find like an open world game that is mega low stakes, then I would consider that as a way for them to kind of get involved with modern control schemes. But you need something that's like kind of fun and extravagant and weird. And I think actually, I might just say fucking Goat Simulator is actually really perfect. Again, some of the material, like, some of the language is a little, it's not like they're cursing left and right or anything like that, but there's little bits and pieces of it where you're like, depending on how young your kid is and whatever, you're like, this is a little weird. But that and Katamari has a lot of time limits and stuff, so there is stakes there that kind of make things that can make things frustrating for a kid early on. But I feel like that stuff is actually pretty decent for getting kids to understand modern controllers. So yeah, I would say Katamari and Goat Simulator. That was the path that worked for my son really, really well. For my daughter, it was more, I don't know, like she played those games also, and that probably helped her a lot. But before that, she had been playing like Super Mario Wonder, and she had been playing Mario Kart, and she wasn't especially good at either of those games, and so it was frustrating for her. And it's less frustrating for her now playing Kirby Air Riders. I think because she has played some of those other games, but yeah. Let's see. Next emails here. John has a very lengthy scenario here. The good news, you're being given $500 million. The bad news, you have to spend it all making a game. What kind of game are you going to make? For the sake of argument, let's assume you can convince whatever lead people you want to come join your new studio, and they can build out their teams from there. They're all really great at what they do. It's just up to you to steer the ship and make the final decisions. If the game succeeds, everyone wins. If it doesn't make a healthy profit, you have to fire everyone, and they've lost years of their lives. You're allowed to acquire IP within reason or bring some dormant franchise back to life if you want. The only rule, there's so many rules where you're playing games. The only rule is you have to spend all the money on reasonable expenses and try to make it all back. In general, what do you think studios will see as the large bet genres that are most likely to be profitable in 5 to 7 years? And is it any different from what we're seeing now? Would you go for one of those categories and try and play it safe, or do something riskier? How much would you pay for the Mr. Do license? Yeah, I don't know. $500 million is kind of a lot of money, I guess, for making a game these days. It's, assuming that includes marketing and all of that sort of stuff, you do start to eat into that money. You're making a big budget thing, so it's kind of whatever. But I don't. Matt Piscatella, the keeper of the numbers, posted the Circana's kind of latest updates around engagement earlier this morning. And I found that pretty depressing, I guess I would say. He's got console numbers here comparing the top 5 most played games in the US on Xbox, ranked by percentage of active panel that played. And so he's got those numbers for both Xbox and for PlayStation. The PlayStation list is completely unchanged from 2024 to 2025. The top 5 most played games on PlayStation are: at number 5, Minecraft; at number 4, Roblox; at number 3, GTA 5; at number 2, Call of Duty; and at number 1, Fortnite. It sucks. I don't even think that those games are all bad. The Xbox list is mildly different in that the order is different. However, the 5 games are identical. The 2024 list for Xbox is: at number 1 is Call of Duty, number 2, Fortnite, number 3, Minecraft, number 4, GTA, number 5, Roblox. 2025's numbers: number 1 is Fortnite, number 2 is Call of Duty, number 3 is GTA, number 4 is Minecraft, and number 5 is Roblox. There's a lot of gridlock at the top of gaming in terms of engagement, right? And I don't mean to say, I hate these games or whatever. Like, these games in a lot of cases have earned that by, years of solid updates that make players want to stay with it or whatever. Like, Fortnite is how many years in now? How old is Fortnite? It's ancient. But like, it is still getting nominated for awards for like the Simpsons integration and the other stuff there, right? So it's like people are still liking Fortnite. It's not like people are like, oh, I hate Fortnite, but I still play it, and these damn kids are playing it. Like, a lot of people, I see a ton of people on my friends lists who are, if not my exact age, are roughly in an age group that is similar to mine that are playing a fuckload of Fortnite. And I look at that and go like, okay, like I guess, like I don't especially enjoy Fortnite enough to want to do that, but you know, hey, okay, sure. Like, yeah, I know they put the Simpsons in it. You love the Simpsons. Sure. Why not? Why wouldn't you buy that stuff? So it's, you know, it's a lot of people. Yeah. Mr. Mudron here says, I'm almost exactly as old as you and I've put 2,000 hours into Fortnite. Yeah. Like, people fucking like Fortnite. You have got to give it to Fortnite. People fucking like Fortnite. Still. People play a fuckload of Fortnite, and these numbers, you know, they've got the numbers to back it up. So, like, so it's not a case of like, oh, I hate all these video games or whatever, but it is a case of just like, man, I really don't like that these games have this like log jam at the top of these charts. I think it's a bummer that we aren't seeing more games break through on a regular basis. The thing I would also say is that a lot of other games that are coming out are not positioned to break through into this top 5. They're not games that have this insane cadence of updates and regularity and these massive crossovers and, you know, all of the other stuff that Fortnite has done, right? It's not Call of Duty, which, you know, for all of its faults is still very entrenched, you know? Like, people still play a lot of Call of Duty and, you know, like, whatever. It is still number 2 on PlayStation where people have to buy it for full price. Well, actually, I guess I should say that probably does include Warzone numbers. Like, Call of Duty is probably a deceptive thing here because for as much as it's a $70 video game, it is also several years of games packed together under one name, and Warzone is free. So I guess, you know, there is obviously a free component to that. So yeah, I don't know, man. I think that stuff, it would be nice to see more stuff crack into that top 5, but also most studios and developers are not poised to even make a run at this, to make a credible run at this top 5. Like, you're telling me you're going to ship a game in 2026 that people like, okay, more people are going to play this game than people who play Minecraft. Really? Okay. It's going to have to be a pretty fucking good game to knock these games loose. Like, Roblox has a fucking death grip on a generation. It's not a good thing. But it is a thing. Are you making the game that's going to is what the fuck? The game that's out this month from the Apex people, is that going to High Guard? Sure. High Guard, why not? Is that going to crack into this top 5? No. I mean, it'll have to be a massive success, right? It'll have to fucking blow up like crazy. Arc Raiders is surprisingly big. Maybe if that game has a great year, if that game has like an amazing year of updates and people stick with it, maybe that game will crack into this list next year, right? You never know. Like, there are people that are fucking loving that game. And so maybe it has a shot. And that would be an interesting story, just from the perspective of the price it's sold at and, you know, the size of that team and whatever else, right? Like, there's something fascinating about that. But I think that gets into just like, you know, we're also seeing a lot of successful games that don't crack this top 5 and don't need to. Something like Peak. How many copies did Peak sell? Probably a lot. But, you know, it's a game that, you know, kind of comes and goes in waves, or, you know, like, not as many people are talking about Peak as were several months ago. But that doesn't mean it wasn't a big success, right? You know, the Balatros of the world that blow up and make money for years to come because there's always someone who has not heard of Balatro. It doesn't mean it's like one of the most played console games in a calendar year, but it doesn't need to be in order to make what I assume is if I think this is a technical term, a fuckload of money in the process. Vampire Survivors is not one of the top 5 most played games on this list, and probably never was. Maybe it cracked in there that first year. I don't know. But I bet the people behind Vampire Survivors, behind that machine, the maniac at the center of it all, and the team that is sprung up around it, and I bet they're doing fine. So yeah, and like there's sort of a, for as much as the true massive mainstream big successes, as much as those games are largely static, and the genres that populate that list are there's a similarity between those 5 games, right? In terms of their approach to keeping people engaged, let's say. There's some shared concepts between Call of Duty, Fortnite, Minecraft, GTA, and Roblox that help keep those games there. So when you ask me if I had $500 million, what type of game would I make? It's a terrifying, that's a terrifying amount of money, because it's big enough to where you feel like you're going to have to try to make a run at one of those. If you want to make that money back and turn a profit and do all that stuff, you're making a fucking big game. You're one of these people that's out there going like, all right, we're fucking going for it. We're going to burn through all this fucking money in the process, and we're going to save, $150 million or $200 million or something for marketing alone. So let's make something that we think is going to appeal to an awful lot of players. And so what is that? Are you trying to make the next platform as a video game? Are you trying to make okay, we made a tool set and now you can make your own games? You take that money and do you go invest it all in Gary's Mods fame's Sandbox, which is has all the potential to be a Roblox-like platform, and it already is in a lot of ways, even though it's not publicly available. It is that is basically what they're making, is something in the kind of current Roblox/Fortnite mold, with some differences seemingly on the business and ownership end of it from the looks of it, and I think some of that holds some very interesting appeal. But do you go try and do something like that? It's a very crowded space unto itself, right? How do you do that? Wasn't that what Mind's Eye was going to be? That's terrifying. So $500 million is actually a fucking terrifying amount of money, because to make that back, the types of games you're able to make becomes limited. And you start to see how a company like EA doesn't go and make a lot of smaller games all the time, right? Because when they're placing these bigger, larger bets, you end up in that space. To me, the sane thing to do would be to take that $500 million and start a label and make a few games, make 2 or 3 smaller games, but no one wants to hear that. No one wants that answer, right? We're going to take on League of Legends. I don't know. Yeah, I really don't have the exact answer to that, because I think there's such a glut of this stuff at the top, and I think the idea of someone trying to come in and muscle into that territory is like a fucking ridiculous gambit. So much money on the line, so many years of development, and you see games that try to do it with some regularity, but they don't do it, do you go make some kind of vague fucking esports thing? Do you try and make a League of Legends, not a MOBA per se, but do you go try to make a competitive multiplayer game? and think like, oh, okay, we're going to invest all this money into this and try to build something that has a vague esports strategy to it so that, you know, people can get hype. People love to get hype. And then you're selling skins or whatever. Like, you know, like what would you even make there? You know, you're going to make a hero shooter? That seems like not necessarily clapped out, but, you know, Marvel Rivals is, you know, kind of dominating some of that space, and Overwatch still probably has a healthy player count. But, like, that's not, you know. I think it's easy to make a hero shooter that no one cares about, because we see people do it all the time. You know? Skelicopter asks, is esports still super relevant, or am I just out of touch? I don't think esports was ever super relevant. There has never been a period where esports was like super relevant, I would say. There are times when esports has been, like, for certain types of games and certain genres even, esports is a factor. You know, even if you're not necessarily making money on your esports game or whatever, there's still money to be made on the players who want to think the game they're playing is competitively balanced and meaningful, and it's a sport and this and that, and there's a scene to follow. Like, some people just want to get caught up in a game to that degree, right? Where they want to, like, oh, the meta has changed and this and that, and they want that kind of nitty gritty, like, patch to patch experience of bullshit, you know, and they need that. But, like, I don't know, like you like the number, like how many, I don't know what, like the relevance of esports is purely in how many people watch that shit and how much money is to be made by the players. But also, like, what's the likelihood that the average player could get involved in that? It's like zero in most cases, right? To me, I always thought the interesting thing about competitive gaming, in professional competitive gaming, let's say, not just esports, because there's such a connotation there. But it always felt like the potential there was like, oh, eventually this should get to a point where the average player can do this and maybe, like, do okay at it and not earn a living or whatever, but, like, yeah, maybe people make a little money. Maybe people win a tournament and get paid here. You know, maybe they do a thing, and it shouldn't have to be. And then, you know, like, not long after that, things went in the exact opposite direction of, like, we have 12 Koreans locked in a house playing StarCraft 2 for fucking 20 hours a day. And all of that fucking insane shit, you know? And that stuff was interesting because that felt like, oh, if esports is going to break through, it was going to be then, you know? And then the second time that if esports was going to break through was around COVID. Because when all the real sports stopped, ESPN had to poke their head up again and go, oh shit, the fuck do we do? And so esports had a potential to kind of fill a gap there. And if it had done so and then hung on when real sports came back, then maybe that could have been a moment. But the minute that real sports came back, people were like, okay, fuck this shit. Like, what? Who cares? People don't care about the stories. There are a lot of, like, sports you would say are real sports that are very hard to get audiences to watch and care about. Bowling, darts, Scrabble. All the cool stuff that ESPN used to show that now they can't be bothered with. I think culturally, a lot of the esports stuff is grotesque, like just disgusting. Like a lot of the people involved in it and around that scene are kind of like more gross than ever, and they've been pretty fucking gross over the years. Like back in the MLG days, it's not like esports seemed like it was on the up and up. It seemed like the fucking shadiest shit in the world. The only people that were talking about how fucking awesome it was were fucking, like, cocaine nightmares walking around E3 that you're just like, oh, this fucking scumbag is back. Jesus Christ. I don't want to fucking hear it. I'm tired of fucking hearing your esports pitch. This is embarrassing. And so now you have, like, Saudi Arabia money kind of coming in and trying to, like, you know, be a part of this stuff. And it just feels like they're behind the times and throwing money away, if you ask me. because I don't think esports is going to, like, I don't think that stuff is going to happen. I think when it does happen, it will happen to the games that perhaps have earned it and have earned enough of a player base and a very specific thing. Like, you can try to plan for it, and you probably do have to have some kind of strategy as to what you're going to do competitively in order to have that happen at all. But there's no guarantee that planning for it is going to make it happen, because I think we've seen time and time again games that try to launch with, like, here's our esports thing, and, like, just no one fucking cares. So yeah, I don't know, man. I think that's kind of that just seems like another dead end. Even like, it's 5-7 years ago, it felt like people cared more about the international and some of the league stuff than they do now. Like, I don't know. Like, it just feels like that stuff just kind of still happens, and people go like, oh, okay, yeah. And it's just not the same level that it was even then. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't think esports is dead per se. I don't think it'll ever go away, because I do think that, like, there's a certain part of, like, fucking gamer culture, for whatever you want to call it. Like, there is still that fucking bullshit fucking energy drink and fucking neon fucking hats and, check out my streamer setup and like all of the fucking, here's our fucking Spotify playlist for gamer jams, and just like all that fucking cornball, pathetic ass bullshit. Like, there's just like right now, as we speak, as you listen to this, like, someone is on a microphone much like this one somewhere, except it probably has neon, like, RGB shit in it, and they are saying, let's go. And, like, it's just like that shit is still out there. And esports has intertwined itself in a lot of ways with a lot of, like, whatever the fuck gamer culture is now, at that age group or whatever, right? It's like the fucking esports guy that was in that fucking Amazon commercial, like, saying the most embarrassing shit out loud one possibly could. And there's like, and you're just like, is that real lingo that people actually talk like that? Or do people just type it, and anytime it is said out loud, it's just like, oh, this is, you people need to fucking stop. Like, there is just a certain type of fucking slang and things that have risen out of this, that I find fucking repulsive and embarrassing. And a lot of that is the kind of streamer culture, like all the fucking dipshits on Kick, even if they're not playing games anymore because they're too busy running gambling scams. Like, it's all just part of the same hustle culture, fucking broed out fucking garbage, right? It's just like, it's crazy. It's just crazy. To see, like, the way that, like, these pathetic people try to fucking roll. Like that fucking Aiden Ross guy, who just seems like a gigantic fucking scumbag, like, is getting caught up in, like, a RICO case with Drake over the company, the gambling company that backs Kick. Like, this, you just look at it and go like, oh yeah, that sounds about right. That the rapper, the R&B scumbag Drake, has somehow gotten wrapped up in all of that pathetic bullshit. Like, it just looks like a bunch of fucking, like, well-moneyed losers clinging on to each other in this, like, incredibly it's just like, look at it and just go like, yuck. The fuck is happening? Like, and this stuff is all like, that stuff's not directly related to video games quite so much anymore, but it is kind of still at the periphery of this fucking culture, right? And that's kind of the weird thing about all of it, where it's just like, this whole thing just seems so pathetic. Like, these people just seem so fucking sad. I don't know. It's a really weird, I don't know. Like, that whole aspect of gaming, to me, all is kind of lumped. It's all very easy to lump into the same thing. Like, the esports weirdos and the esports speculative business dudes who fucking, like, come in and go, all right, we're gonna make a bunch of money this time. Get in the house. Get in the hype house. We're getting, you guys are on the esports team, but you're not competitors. You're the influencers on the esports team. So you just make videos, and we're gonna sponsor it, or whatever the fuck it is. Like, didn't just a bunch of people just leave FaZe or something? Like, it's just a bunch of fucking weird noise out there. around whatever that economy is. And I don't know. It just looks like a bunch of fucking losers trying to convince each other that like the thing they're doing is cool or good. And like just yeah, I don't know. Like from it, as someone who has been looking at this culture for a pretty long time, you just look at it and go like, oh yeah, you guys look like the viral outgrowth of the esports creeps from the early 2000s. Like you guys look like embarrassing scumbags the same way the esports people looked like desperate losers that were convinced that like, oh, this thing's gonna be $1 billion thing, and this is this, and we're making a ton of money right now, and they had to like look the part, and so they were all out there, you know, wearing sunglasses up in the club all night, just looking like the biggest pieces of shit at all of these events over the years that I was at, and you just look at them and it's like, yeah, fuck these people. Fuck these people. Like, you guys fucking are the biggest fucking losers. You're trying to convince people that like, no, this is the cool thing. Like, God, just stop. Anyway, that's gonna do it for the show. Thanks everybody for writing in. In conclusion, take the $500 million and fucking, I don't know, just pay your people really well and make a smaller game and try to make 5 games. I don't know. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll stream some more stuff. Of course, Friday we'll rank some 8-bit Nintendo games and all of that. So come on through. Maybe tomorrow we'll play Anthem. I don't know. That seems like a terrible idea. But I guess, you know, it's not going to be an option for much longer here unless someone's got a custom server in the works. I'm sure someone does. But yeah, perhaps we will take a look at Anthem tomorrow morning. So come on through. And I will see you next time, next Tuesday, at the absolute latest here on this very podcast. Have a good one. Bye.